Hello and welcome to 6 Part. Today I'm gonna start a new series, What If Deku Lost Everything, Part 1. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
I don't usually fear anything. I've blasted my way through more than I can remember, and fear is weakness. I literally blow things to pieces because I'm explosive. What's so important? Give me a challenge, and I'll destroy it. Who would have guessed that I would experience this degree of fear? I've never been this afraid in my life as I stand here in the oppressive darkness of this thick forest. Scared is hardly an adequate description. Horrified, terrified, and frightened. Those were more appropriate. And it has nothing to do with the fact that I'm stranded in the middle of a goddamn maze of trees with no light at all. I'm not shivering because of the rustling of leaves or the unsettling hoots of owls. With one blast, I could easily destroy all of that. No, it's not the things I can kill that are making me crazy, but rather the things I can't control. And Deku is that problematic entity at the moment. I have no control over the fever that imprisons him or the way he breathes. His mind is racing with so many ideas that I can't even try to mess with them. He's also too delirious and disoriented to understand what I'm saying. What a waste of his limitless intelligence, nerd. And I am aware that this is not the time to ponder the what-ifs. Now is not the time to berate myself for believing that if I had just swallowed my pride and paid attention to what Deku had to say, all of this could have been avoided. Helped him despite his claims that he didn't require it. Even though he claimed to be fine, I made the right decisions earlier. Because heroes do that, don't they? They pay attention to their environment, interpret information, and make the right choices. However, what have I done? So far, I have only made poor choices. There he is now, slumped against the cold ground, gasping for air, his eyes glazed with feverish delirium, babbling incoherently about things that don't make sense, and clinging to his side as if the pain could be forced away by sheer willpower. The blood on his lips, however, makes it obvious that the pain is not limited to his side. I'm going crazy. I feel as though I'm trudging through mud, and I know that I have to do something, anything. His voice is barely audible as he croaks, "Kachan, I'm sorry, I don't want to slow you down. But can I just have some water, please? I'm really thirsty." I reach for the bottle that's lying a few feet from my bag without thinking, limp back to him, unscrew the cap, and tilt his head up so he can drink. However, he coughs as soon as he takes a sip, and his face contorts into a mask of agony. As though keeping himself together might stop his lungs from escaping, he clasps his chest as though it were about to explode. His body folds in on itself with every desperate cough, but all I can do is helplessly rub his back. A moment later, he falls to the ground, gasping for air. I try to get him to drink again, but all of a sudden he grabs my hand. Below him, crimson drops of water pool and mix with the trickling water. "Mom, please don't leave me. It hurts, Mom. It hurts a lot. Please make it stop," he sobs, his voice shattering like glass. I wanted to yell at him for referring to me as his mother. Does he believe that I'm as worn out and old as that hag? But I know, I am responsible for this, so those words remain on my lips. I understand exactly why he is unable to distinguish between the fever-induced wild and reality, and why we are trapped in this hell. Shish, Izuku, come on. Stop crying like a baby and breathe. We need to finish this assignment, and you're slowing me down by not listening. I say stop crying this instant and breathe, damn it. The words pour out, harsh and desperate. Hold on. When did I begin referring to him as Izuku? When he's hyperventilating like this, it doesn't matter. He's kicking his legs and tugging at his hair like a child having a fit, but he's not hearing anything. Every sob is shaking him from the bottom of his heart. I try to pry his fingers open by grabbing his wrist, but he stops. His eyes roll back in his head as his trembling stops. No, 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 Deku, you need to stay awake, you know it. Desperation tugging at my throat, I begin lightly slapping his face. Nothing. With a sense of urgency in my veins, I shake him harder. Deku. Izuku. Izuku. If Aizawa-sensei believes I can get through an hour with Deku, he has obviously gone insane. Of course, as soon as we are by ourselves, I will murder him. I despise him. No, forget about that. I detest him. I hate every ounce of his pitiful soul. I detest the way he laughs foolishly, the way he grins foolishly, and the way he walks awkwardly, as if he's tripping over his own feet for amusement. Not to mention how, whenever he's confused, he scratches his stupid head as if it would make him any less of a fucking nerd. The way that he never stops talking. Those hazel eyes, too. They're his most repulsive feature. They practically exude trust, as if I were a god who would never abandon him and would always be by his side. What a farce. I didn't hate him this much when we were kids. Yes, I would always win when we played with All Might plush toys because Deku was such a clumsy mess. To prevent him from crying like a baby, I would occasionally let him win. Deku is dangerous when he is angry. Even so, he never remained insane for very long because he was constantly lost in his peaceful little world and blissfully ignorant of the harsh reality that surrounded him. I began to distance myself from him after it was declared that he was quirkless. I would never, ever want to be seen with a worthless loser like him again. Deku, though, he ignored the cues I was giving him and clung to me like a fucking parasite. Did he really think that someone as useless as him would be someone I would want to remain friends with? The final straw was that day by the river. I wanted to demonstrate to everyone that I could be trusted, that I was the person they should rely on to guide them. When I slipped, though, he was there, offering to help. I certainly wasn't supposed to appear weak, and I certainly wasn't supposed to fall like that. He wasn't meant to assist me. My hatred for him became a raging fire from that point on. When he entered Ua, then, I felt like screaming. How could a weakling with Deku's peculiarities even gain admission to my ideal academy? With that ostentatious new habit of his, he disproved my notion that I would at last be able to enjoy some quiet time without his constant nagging. Fantastic. It was exactly what I needed. Aizawa-sensei now has the gall to force us to spend 2 whole days together in this hellhole. We have a fairly straightforward task. We have to locate and retrieve something that is hidden in Kinnigan Hill. At checkpoints, there are hints or other information to help us navigate. Remember, this assignment is not to test your speed. It is to test your analytical, combative and survival skills. You can carry as much load as you want, but my advice is to carry just the necessary items. Every checkpoint is a test in itself. Every time you acquire your clue, I'll be notified. Whenever you feel like you cannot continue or don't want to continue, you can send an SOS code from any checkpoint. There is an emergency kit at one of the checkpoint for you. If you fail to bring the hidden object together, you fail. Am I clear? Like the docile puppy he is, Deku responds, yes sir. I mumble, yeah. Whatever. I'm already gritting my teeth as we head into the forest together. I could have completed this task in a few hours if it weren't for this exalted babysitting mission. But no, here I am, dragging my feet with the person I find objectionable. Finding the damn thing, finishing it, and getting out of this mess are my only goals, but who knows how long it will take with Deku following me. This will turn into a nightmare. I was so excited about this assignment that I was unable to control myself. I practically leapt out of my seat, like a child on Christmas morning, when Aizawa-sensei made the announcement on Friday. The pears, however, were the moment of truth. When I found out I was stuck with Kachan, my happiness fell as quickly as a falling meteor. Really? Of all individuals? However, I wouldn't allow a minor setback like this to depress me. It wouldn't be that bad if I just kept my distance, correct? I began compiling a list of all the things we would require on that mountain in my mind. The necessities: rope, water, snacks, and a first aid kit. After sorting everything out, one thing became clear: I needed a large bag. An enormous one. I love going to the mall with Uraraka-san, so that shouldn't be an issue. She will assist me in locating the ideal backpack, one that is roomy enough to accommodate everything. On Monday, the sun was shining brightly on us as we stood at the base of Kinnigan Hill. I couldn't help but adore the lively atmosphere that was enhanced by the upbeat background music produced by the chirping of birds. My heart was pounding from the excitement of the quest that lay ahead of us. We were waiting for Aizawa-sensei to give us our instructions after both of us arrived early. However, Kachan rushed over with his typical fiery demeanor on full display before I could truly get lost in my thoughts. His tone was so authoritative that there was no room for debate. Hey, Deku. If you don't want to be crushed, better stay fucking out of my way, got it? I tried to maintain my composure as I casually reminded him, but we are paired together, and that means we will have to work together. I don't want you fucking with my assignment. You'll ruin it just like you always do. So just better stay away from me. I didn't want to make things worse, so I nodded. Kachan always managed to turn any argument into a violent altercation, so it was rarely fruitful to argue with him. I had hoped that perhaps, just possibly, Kachan would change his mind about our past and we could resume our friendship after All Might's legacy was passed on to me. We had once been friends before we were branded, after all. But as soon as we faced off against All Might in our first class, our first duel as heroes, that hopeful idea vanished. It hurt to be reminded of that altercation. It made it clear that we were no longer friends. But really, that's all right. I now have a large circle of friends who respect me, care about me, and listen to my opinions. They didn't use derogatory language or call me names like Kachan did. I knew rationally that I shouldn't be too bothered by this. A hero doesn't have this mindset. Heroes are expected to be good-hearted and willing to lend a helping hand to others in any situation. I couldn't let these bad emotions stop me from pursuing my goal of becoming a hero like All Might. When Aizawa-sensei arrived, he calmly and collectedly explained the assignment. He gently drew attention to the fact that my bag was so big that it almost loomed over me. I swallowed my embarrassment even though I could feel the heat rising to my cheeks. I was ready. I only packed the bare minimum of necessities because I had discovered the hard way how important it was to be prepared for anything. Kachan was standing with his little bag slung loosely over one shoulder when I looked over at him. I couldn't imagine how he would manage with so little. He must be insanely confident in his own abilities. I felt a surge of giddiness as we entered the forest. Which is the first hint? Where can we find it? How can we determine whether the discovery is the clue? Do we examine each tree? Should we check each rock to see if it was buried or search for clues in the soil? There might be a cave somewhere. Oh, we might also ask the animals. That would have made Kota very happy. Kachan shot back, "Shut up, you damn nerd," already putting his hands in his pockets and quickening his steps. Well, I should really focus when I'm thinking aloud. What if I unintentionally revealed to a villain all of our secrets about apprehending him? It would be disastrous. Imagine if I were being questioned by a villain and I revealed our whole strategy. Or worse, I unrestrainedly rant about the shortcomings of his crazy plan in front of him. I can already see the headlines. Deku, the all-too-innocent hero, blows it again. It would fail instantly. Yes, that would help me achieve my goal of becoming the greatest hero. All right, Izuku, concentrate. We must have a plan. We would be stumbling around this mountain like lost ants without one. I gathered my courage and got ready to explain my idea, but the thing about Kachan is that it's always a little scary. Normally, I have no trouble voicing my opinions, but when it comes to Kachan, I find myself carefully considering every word I say and considering the repercussions before saying anything. Kachan. We need a plan to find our clue. Maybe we should. He pointed firmly at me and then jabbed his finger at himself to emphasize his point. I know that, nerd. You don't give commands to me. Got it, he said. Even though his response felt like a slap in the face, it didn't hurt at all. I've learned over the years which words to use and which to ignore. At times, I feel as though I have mastered his language. I can tell which topics will make him angry and which will ease the tension building inside of him. There aren't many muted subjects, like priceless jewels buried in a stony landscape. At times, Kachan appears to be a complete mystery. Just like an alien, so erratic. He gets angry over trivial things like the paint on the wall or the weather. The problem is that I've come to accept him for who he is. He started to say something else, but then he froze, his gaze locked on something to my right. Curiosity rising, I turned to follow his ferocious gaze. At first glance, the tree grove appeared to be nothing special, consisting only of tall, typically unremarkable trunks that swayed easily in the wind. However, upon closer inspection, I noticed a tree that stood out from the others. Squinting, I tried to figure out what makes it special. I opened my mouth to speak, but Kachan was already walking in its direction before I could say anything. I hurried after him, oblivious to the fact that he had abandoned me once more. My heart skipped a beat when we arrived at the tree and I saw what we both saw. An arrow scratched into the bark, its lines distinct and sharp against the rough surface. We followed it like a breadcrumb trail, and before I knew it, we were inspecting trees in the area and finding more arrows carved into the wood. They all seemed to lead us farther into the forest. We followed the arrows for an hour before coming upon a tree with a downward arrow. None of the other trees that would have indicated the end of our trail had arrows. The arrow itself wasn't what really caught my eye, though, as my mind started racing right away. Just above it was the little silver whistle that was fastened to the tree trunk. A whistle? My thoughts were racing. Is this the hint? Are we meant to discover this? However, why was the arrow pointing downward and away from the whistle if it was the key? Wouldn't it be much more logical if the arrow pointed straight at the whistle, or perhaps had a small illustration of a whistle next to it? Rather, this single downward arrow appeared to be informing us that something was beneath the tree, which, to be honest, felt utterly useless. The space beneath the tree appears tidy. In retrospect, the area appears excessively tidy in contrast to the path we have already traversed, which is littered with leaves, twigs, and sporadic flower petals. Is there a chance that the clue was buried here, right under our feet? Before I could even fully comprehend the contradictory signals, Kachan immediately fell to his knees and started using his bare hands to dig into the ground with his characteristic terrifying decisiveness. I probably squeaked out, "Kachan, wait, a little higher than I meant to. I have a trowel in my bag. You don't need to use your hands." Without even raising his head, he growled, "Don't you dare to slow me down. Do what you want for all I care, but don't you poke your fucking nose in my business." I responded, "Okay, Kachan. I will just dig around to cover the ground faster," with a resigned sigh. I dug through my bag until I found my trowel, then stabbed it into the ground next to him. We dug in relative silence as the minutes passed, both of us focused on the task at hand. My brow began to perspire, and before long, we were both smeared with dirt. The silence of the forest was suddenly broken by a victorious roar. I jumped when I heard Kachan say, "Yes," with that unadulterated, explosive energy. The familiar tension between us had made my heart a little heavy, but now it was pounding with anticipation. Eagerly, I leaned forward and looked over his shoulder. The edge of a wooden box was visible, protruding from the black ground. I started working quietly, using my own trowel to carefully dig around the box. I didn't want to obstruct Kachan's progress, but I also wanted to help find our goal. The laborious process of removing the dirt surrounding the hidden treasure seemed to go on forever. We wrestled the box out of the ground and placed it in front of us, dirt sticking to its uneven surface, after what seemed like an enormous effort. The lock was the first thing that both of us noticed. A solid, metal barrier between us and whatever secrets were inside the box. My attention was drawn to the details, but Kachan's attention was immediately on the practical, finding a key, his eyes focused intently on the churned-up dirt where we had unearthed the box, digging with renewed fervor. As my eyes scanned the engravings on the lock, my analytical mind started working to figure out what they meant. A microphone was paired with a beautifully etched symbol of a flying bird. A microphone and a bird. My thoughts were racing with potential connections. What on earth might that mean? Is that a code? A puzzle? My eyes scanned the ground around the tree and the branches above, looking for any indication of a bird or anything that might provide a clue. As I circled the trunk, I noticed something I had never seen before. A tiny, dark hole in the bark that was located across from where we discovered the box. Is this connected to the engraving of the bird? My curiosity, a strong impulse that frequently triumphs over common sense, took over. I started carefully climbing the tree, pulling myself upward with my fingers gripping the rough bark. I carefully looked inside the hole once I was level with it. Initially, it was nothing but a black hole that showed nothing at all. There was nothing to be seen. I felt a sudden, sharp stinging sensation directly on my nose as I leaned in a little more, attempting to change my position and angle for a better view of the inside. I let out a startled, "Arg!" as my hands automatically went to my face. I lost my hold on the bark in that sudden, painful moment and fell, hitting the ground below with an ungraceful thud. I was startled by the impact, but my nose stung more immediately. My apathy was broken by Kachan's voice, which was full of his typical annoyance. "What are you doing, shithead?" Wincing from the sting, I rubbed my nose and looked up at the hole once more. My curiosity was now even more aroused, in spite of the pain and the embarrassment. What just took place? A tiny head with bright, beady eyes suddenly appeared from the tree's hollow. It was a woodpecker, and it appeared to be evaluating us with an inquisitive, almost playful, tilt of its head. Despite the awkward fall and the sting on my nose, I let out a little, uncontrollable laugh. It was just a bit comical and incredibly unexpected. "Kachan," I said, standing up and brushing the dirt off my clothes, a cautious excitement starting to bubble up inside me. I think the key might be in there." His face was one of suspicion and incredulity as he immediately turned to face me. With an accusing tone, he yelled, "And how do you know that, Deku? Did Aizawa tell you something?" "No," I shook my head in a quick reply. "I saw a bird engraving on the lock. Maybe it's a clue. It makes sense now. I still don't know about the microphone, though." There was a dangerous glint in his eyes as they narrowed. "If you're messing with me to slow me down, I will kill you." He detonated a tiny explosion next to the tree hole before I could even react. It was a startling burst of sound and heat. In a flurry of feathers and rage, the woodpecker swooped down from the hole, shrieked in alarm, and gave Kachan's head a hard, sharp peck. "Ah!" roared Kachan, trying to ward off the angry bird by hurling explosions with both hands. Apparently unconcerned by his explosions, the woodpecker just flew back to the hole and sat on the edge, staring at Kachan with its beady eyes. If it weren't so hilariously funny, I would have felt sorry for Kachan because the explosive hero being harassed by a small bird, was so completely ridiculous. This time, I was able to mostly mask my light laughter with a cough, but I couldn't help but giggle again. Kachan yelled, "Shut up, Deku!" with a twisted expression of pain and rage. "If you are so smart ass, you fetch the key yourself." All right, a straight challenge. I had already come up with a solution. Since the hole was probably its home, the bird was defending it. Without hurting the bird, how could I obtain the key? I looked through my bag for anything that could be useful. Seeds. As a result of my observations of birds in the park, I always had a small bag of birdseed with me. In an attempt to entice the bird away from the hole, I hastily pulled out the little bag and began searching for some seeds to give it. After scattering a few seeds close to the tree's base, I took a deep breath and tried to make an odd noise that I had read might draw birds. I did my best, but it was probably a bad bird call. I was surprised and relieved when, after a few attempts, the bird began to move toward the ground, apparently drawn to the seeds. Kachan saw his chance and immediately began climbing the tree. As if sensing his intention, the woodpecker flew directly beside him and gave his hand 3 quick, sharp pecks when he reached the hole and tightened his grip on the trunk to reach inside with one hand. "Gah!" yelled Kachan, his hold slipping. He roared in frustration once more and slid rather shamefully down the tree trunk, landing near me with a thud. The bird had gone back to its perch by the hole, and he glared up at it. "I saw the key in there," he complained, massaging his hand. "But how the hell do we fetch it with that fucking bird protecting it?" Suddenly, everything made sense to me. Whistle. The lock's microphone and the bird. The woodpecker guards its nest. The whistle was attached to the tree. It was a clue to something that might fend off the bird, not to something beneath the tree. Mike Sensei had to be the one responsible. His passion for theatrical flair and loud noises. "Kachan!" I shouted, my voice brimming with excitement and newly discovered knowledge. I couldn't help but feel proud of myself when I said, "The whistle." That's what the microphone symbol meant. We need a loud noise to keep the bird away so that the other person can go and grab the key. It was this, our first significant triumph on this task, and a great way to tell Aizawa Sensei about it, who was most likely observing us from a distance. I understand why Sensei picked this specific mountain for us. He wants to keep a careful watch on us because his shift this week is coming up. Given our past, he most likely believes that we will kill each other at any time. However, I had other ideas. This task was an opportunity to demonstrate our ability to collaborate, even if it was in a chaotic, shouting, and explosive manner. "Then give me the whistle," Kachan said, his eyes gleaming furiously as he stared at the bird. He grabbed the whistle out of my grasp. "I will kill that bird for hurting me." I felt a tiny surge of concern for the woodpecker, but I knew it would be pointless to try to talk sense into Kachan's head about bird safety at this time. I took a breath and said, "Okay, Kachan, on the count of 3. The whistle's ear-splitting, piercing shriek sounded through the forest before I could begin the count. Fee. I swiftly scaled the tree again, rolling my eyes in a way that Kachan, in his whistling rage, probably missed entirely. The bird had fled a little, hovering uneasily in the air, startled by the sudden, unbelievably loud noise. Fumbling for the tiny, metallic key, I reached into the hole. I sensed it. The whistling faltered a little, and I saw the bird begin to edge back towards the hole as I slid down the tree as fast as I could, holding it tightly. My hands were trembling slightly from a combination of excitement and adrenaline as I staggered beside the box. After a moment of fumbling with the key, I inserted it into the lock. The lock clicked easily and opened with a satisfying sound. We have solved our first puzzle. Kachan ran back from where he had been using his unrelenting whistling to keep the bird away before I could even fully register the sense of accomplishment. He swooped in and grabbed the box out of my hands without even pausing. My first reaction was to object, but I refrained. The inevitable explosion wasn't worth it. Its sides gleamed like polished gold, and a scroll was inside, nestled on a surprisingly plush purple velvet bottom. As it sat there, it appeared extremely elegant and, I dare say, mocking of our unkempt, dirt-strewn appearance. It was neatly tied with a delicate golden thread. With its glossy details and vibrant colors, the entire box looked utterly out of place in the middle of the forest. It was incredibly opulent, more like something you'd find in a high-end gift shop than buried beneath a tree. Almost as an afterthought, a small, simple emergency medical kit was tucked inside the box's lid. I was a little taken aback by its inclusion, but I thought that was quite practical. Eager to discover the next clue, my hand automatically reached for the scroll, fingers already working to untie the golden thread. But with a speed that never ceases to amaze me, Kachan grabbed the knot from me just as I was ready to loosen it. With a low, menacing growl, He snarled, "Do you have a death wish, Deku? Keep your filthy hands away from my clue, dickhead." I recoiled and gave it to him. That was simpler. His expression changed from his usual aggressive scowl to one of confusion as I watched him roughly unroll the scroll. As he read the words, a deep furrow formed between his brows. Because I was so curious, I carefully leaned over his shoulder and attempted to read the scroll for myself. The text was written in a beautiful, legible script on the parchment. Despite my muddy origins, I am pure and lovely. People adore me because of my spiritual charm and good looks. Here's your next hint. Before I close the store for the day, come get it. As I read the riddle, my mind was already attempting to decipher its meaning. Muddy spots, beautiful, pure, spiritually captivating. A store? Probably another clue from one of our teachers. It was a classic riddle. However, what might it be? In an attempt to make sense of the seemingly unrelated hints, my mind began to enumerate items that fit the description. Kachan continued to gaze at the scroll, clearly bewildered. He was just thinking, not yelling or blowing up. It was a unique sight, and for a split second, I nearly forgot about our conflict as I concentrated solely on the puzzle in front of us. We had to determine where to go before the shop closed in order to find the next clue. A sense of urgency was added by that final line. At last. That wooden box, damn it. That annoying bird pecked at me after I dug like a goddamn mole. A bird? Really? What sort of nonsense is this task? Is this what we discovered? Perched on purple velvet like a king or queen. A fancy scroll tied with gold thread. Additionally, a damned first aid kit adhered to the lid. Are they really expecting us to get mauled by bears out here? And the scroll was already being fumbled with by that goddamn nerd, Deku. As soon as he untied it, I grabbed it out of his hands. He merely stood there like a startled rabbit while I did the actual work, not really doing anything. As I unfolded the scroll, I looked over the text. Despite my muddy origins, I am pure and lovely. People adore me because of my spiritual charm and good looks. Here's your next hint. Before I close the store for the day, come get it. I glared at the cryptic bullshit and growled, what the hell does this mean? We're in the middle of a goddamn forest, surrounded by dirt and trees, and some jerk wants me to find a store. Where the fuck am I supposed to find a shop in this goddamn place? The heat rising beneath my skin was palpable. I wanted to lash out right now and blast everything into oblivion because I was so damned angry. I was pecked first by that feathered menace. This is me, Katsuki Bakugo, the future #1. And then this cryptic nonsense. Most likely, it was a pointless puzzle meant to squander my time. And to make matters worse, Deku was still there, alive and well. I wish I could just get rid of him permanently because he was like a bothersome thorn. His brain was likely processing the riddle in that pitiful mumbling manner, and he was already muttering. Muddy place, he muttered, his gaze flitting. It should be somewhere near mud. I interrupted him before he could begin one of his typical meandering analyses, the ones that somehow managed to be both blatantly obvious and utterly pointless at the same time. With a tone full of sarcasm, I said, "Great thinking, Deku." I rolled my eyes inwardly and said, "This place is so goddamn clean that finding a muddy spot will hardly be an issue." The idiot would, of course, state the obvious. However, he continued to ramble and ignored me, as he always did when he was lost in his own thoughts. I overheard him mumbling something about something near water, followed by the gratingly accurate phrase, the Serpent River. The River of the Serpent? Somewhere around here is that damn river. In spite of my rage, my mind acknowledged the possibility. At least it fit the first line. Water, muddy places. Then the true pain started as he opened his mouth once more. I think we should go over there, Kachan. The river isn't far from here. We just need to look for signs of water. Maybe we could take a little break there, it's already lunchtime. I brought some rice cakes, mochi, kimchi and cup ramen. I didn't think about where I'd find hot water, but I figured if you were with me, you could boil some for me. Only if you want to though. I don't want to be a burden or anything. I was experiencing a sharp rise in blood pressure. His voice grew softer and more tentative with each word as he continued to speak. Cakes made of rice? Mochi? Ramen in a cup? Goddamn, was he having a picnic? Asking me to bring water to a boil? This man's sheer courage? I interrupted him mid-sentence with a roar that reverberated through the trees. Just shut up. How on earth was he able to talk for so long without actually breathing? It was enragement. I glared at him, my hands already glimmering with repressed energy, and said, "Don't say another word. I am keeping the box and going to find that river myself. Keep your mouth shut. Got it?" Without waiting for his pitiful response, I launched myself into the air by blasting explosions. I didn't require his consent. I didn't require his assistance. He wasn't necessary for me. Putting as much goddamn distance between myself and that obnoxious, mumbling, useless Deku as possible, I flew over the trees. I had to leave him, away from his muttering, away from his pitiful attempts at dialogue. River Serpent. All right. I'd solve the goddamn riddle, find the damn river, get the next clue, and do it more quickly and effectively than he ever could. Alone. Because I did things that way. Deku could simply attempt to keep up. The worthless goddamn nerd, if he could. In an attempt to catch his attention before he took off again, I nodded. I tried to sound reasonable as I called out, "Wait, Kachan. I can't follow you using full cowl." It would snap the straps on my bag, in a slightly strained voice. Naturally, though, he didn't pay attention. I stood there and sighed quietly as I watched him vanish into the trees after he simply took off like a rocket. I shrugged resignedly and began to walk by myself, the peaceful forest enveloping me like a comforting blanket. I walked slowly and deliberately, taking in the serene cadence of the forest. The birds were chirping a tune that sounded like a lullaby, and the clouds above were moving slowly across the sky, their fluffy shapes changing all the time. The steady heartbeat of the forest was accompanied by the cicadas' buzzing, which added a rhythmic bass. I was reminded of the infrequent times when I could simply unwind after a long, demanding day by the soft breeze that brushed against my skin, lifting my hair and wiping the perspiration from my brow. It was pleasant, even soothing. For a moment, the weight of my backpack was forgotten as my step regained its light, almost carefree bounce. While exploring, I came across some fluffy white rabbits that looked almost unreal in the midst of the greenery. Their little paws scrambled excitedly as I grabbed a handful of nuts from my bag and tossed them to them. Everything seemed straightforward for a while, calm, uncontested, a far cry from the mayhem of only a few minutes before. The rustle of leaves in front of me abruptly jolted me out of my reverie. My intuition took over. I instinctively assumed a fighting stance and froze, tense. Sincerely, I didn't want to cause any harm, but I also didn't want to be caught off guard. I squinted as I looked over the thicket in front of me. I would defend myself, whatever it was. A sudden halt to the rustling was followed by the swift movement of a deer. I watched it dart past me without a second look, and relaxed a little. I let out a slow, perplexed exhale. What was causing a deer to act so nervously? Even though it was only a forest creature, I felt a little uneasy about the way it rushed by, as if it were running from something dangerous. The serene facade came back to me as I knelt, picked up my bag, and carried on walking. I tried to convince myself that Kachan must have discovered the clue by now. The silence lasted until all of a sudden the rustling began again, more frantically. My muscles stiffened once more, braced for whatever lay ahead. There is undoubtedly a problem. Then, suddenly, a wolf, or perhaps it was only a passing shadow, came into view. I had more questions than answers after it disappeared as swiftly as it had appeared. I accelerated my pace, thinking, this is not normal, and I could feel it in my bones. Explosions sounded far away, loud, sharp bursts reverberating through the trees, interrupting my thoughts. My heart pounded as the well-known uneasiness settled in my stomach. It was obvious that Kachan was struggling. I pressed on, slicing through the brush, until I saw him at last, standing among a horde of flies, tearing at them. He had an allergic reaction, no doubt, as his face was flushed and covered in hives, and his arms and neck were slightly bleeding from scratches. I'm not sure if it was from something he touched or ate, but it required medical attention right away. He appeared to have gone completely crazy, swatting and scratching at everything in his immediate vicinity. Knowing that I needed to get him some help before things worsened, I approached him carefully so as not to startle him. His eyes darted like a cornered beast as he flinched at the sight of me, but then he relaxed just enough to allow me to approach. He was tense, and he kept scratching at his arms and neck as though he was trying to get rid of the annoyance. I hastily took the water bottle and medical kit out of my bag. Kachan, here, I said quietly, attempting to sound composed. Take these. They'll help with your allergy. Stay the fuck away from me, he yelled, his eyes burning with rage and his voice tinged with annoyance as he scratched ferociously. I am aware that he is in pain, but his condition will only get worse if he doesn't take the right medication. I stepped forward gingerly and spoke in a firm but gentle tone. You're only going to make it worse if you keep scratching. Please, Kachan. I know it's itchy. I get it. But I have medicine that can help. Trust me. His eyes narrowed as he scoffed. Trust you? Yeah, right. What next? Trust the Grim Reaper. He's here to suck out my soul and grant me immortality? There was a brief moment of hesitation in me. Perhaps I should just let him alone. He obviously didn't want my assistance. Who was I to stop him from scratching himself to death? After all, it was him who abandoned me. I would have attempted to halt this reaction sooner if we had been strolling together. Now, though, a part of me wanted to ignore it and let him handle it however he felt like it. Perhaps he had to reach his lowest point before he would accept assistance. Perhaps I should simply go and vent my annoyance on my own. I was unable to turn my head away, though, as that thought attempted to settle. I had a stubborn part of me that wouldn't give up. Aizawa sensei once said, "Sometimes, you just have to be there, even if they don't want you to." I recalled that statement. I became more determined as I saw him suffer, scratching frantically at his irritated skin, his face flushed from effort and annoyance. Even though my hand shook a little, I couldn't help but notice how desperate he appeared. Nor was he taking the bottle of water. I knew a little cool relief might be helpful because his skin was red and irritated. There was only one choice left. One that he will absolutely detest. I inhaled deeply and steeled myself by gripping the bottle's cap tightly. No going back now, I told myself in silence. Then, with one quick, decisive move, I moved forward and sprayed his face with water. His face changed instantly, first from shock to anger, then to a more complex expression that I couldn't quite make out. "Whoa, I am dead meat." Suddenly, he burst out. Hot and dangerous, 5 explosions ripped through the air in quick succession. As I dodged with full cowl, I could feel the searing heat rushing past me. The rage and frustration radiating from him caused my heart to race, not fear. He seemed to be attempting to extinguish his annoyance. With my thoughts already racing, I ran in the other direction. I forced myself to move more quickly when I noticed a nearby fallen, broken tree. I slowed down close to the downed trunk as he got closer, then leapt high and yelled, "Detroit smash!" He was trapped beneath the fallen wood after the forceful punch broke another tree and sent the debris crashing down. His itching must have been excruciating, and his breathing was now labored, so I knew he would struggle to free himself. I needed to talk to him because I knew the allergic reaction was getting worse. With a voice that was both frustrated and worried, I screamed, "Kachan, stop this stupidity and take the damn medication. You're the one causing us to lag now, and I won't fail this assignment because of your damn pride." All he could reply with was a weary "tch," too worn out or disheartened to argue. I quickly grabbed the medication and another bottle of water from my bag and stomped off. I carefully walked back to him and pressed the medication into his hand. "Here, just take this. It'll help." After a moment of hesitation, he reluctantly grunted and swallowed the pill. I inhaled deeply before grabbing the downed tree and pushing it up so he could crawl out. I said gently, "Come on, I have a medicinal cream to soothe your itch," and began to return to my bag. I hoped the promise of relief would be sufficient, even though I knew he was likely debating whether to trust me once more. He scratched and fidgeted for a few moments, lost in thought, and then he began to follow. I had hydrocortisone cream and a wet towel that I had soaked earlier, so I was ready when he came. I pointed to a rock nearby. "Sit there," I said gently as I extended the towel to him. He sat and moved slowly, then took the towel and made slow, deliberate movements with it over his arms, neck, and face. I gave him the cream after he was done. Gently, I said, "Don't apply it on the cuts." After a cautious glance at the tube, he applied the cream to his arms, saying, "It won't do any good there. Just the inflamed skin." Uncertain of the precise location of the cuts, he hesitated before deciding to apply it to his face. He was obviously overwhelmed because his head was pounding and the itching was excruciating. He swatted my hand away as I reached for the tube, and I blindly smeared the cream onto his face and neck after noticing his hesitation and offering, "Here, let me do it for you." He was clearly having trouble, most likely due to a headache and that incessant itching that would not go away. Before he could do any more harm, I knew I needed to divert his attention. I didn't want him to hurt himself further because his skin was already inflamed. "Hey, Kachan. Can you do me a favor? Find me 4 big, heavy rocks. Something solid and sturdy. Please," I said after pausing for a moment. "I am keeping the box and going to find that river myself. Keep your mouth shut. Got it?" When we were compelled to collaborate, I'm not sure what the devil I was anticipating. That's all I wanted. Some peace. Deku's incessant chatter and that damn bird combined to give me a goddamn headache, and all I wanted to do was get away from them. For once, God, I just wanted to be left alone. As I hit the top of my blastoff and began to descend, the cool, soothing air hit my face. It felt good, like I was finally able to get rid of the headache that had been bothering me all day. I looked around after a few skips, anticipating Deku would be right behind me, keen to continue this pointless search. However, he wasn't. Odd. Reaching for my canteen, I located a nearby tree and sank under its shade. The cool, refreshing water was exactly what I needed to help me decompress. I tried to ignore the pounding in my skull and thought, just a few minutes rest and then I'll get back to searching. I was startled awake by the sound of the leaves rustling. My body seemed to have other ideas, even though I hadn't intended to fall asleep. My muscles tensed instinctively as I jerked upright. I looked around slowly, my eyes alert. A deer was strolling calmly to my right, most likely taking care of itself. However, the tense and erratic rustling that had woken me came from the other side. Then, suddenly, a wolf with snapping jaws and bristling fur rushed through the bushes. With savage intent, it lunged at the deer. I fired a shot without thinking, my quirk exploding into a shrub between the two. The wolf stood up, poised to strike again, and the deer ran away, paws slapping the ground. As the wolf accelerated, I unleashed a torrent of explosions, each one reverberating loudly. Angry, I roared, "Die, you fucking piece of shit!" With each shot, aiming to bury those claws in me, the wolf ducked my blasts and leapt over me in a flurry of fur and teeth. I followed it, aiming directly at its face, but I stumbled and fell face first into the ground after stepping back onto a shrub. Seeing that I had knocked the beast several feet away, I quickly pushed myself up and narrowed my eyes. Rather than launching an assault, the wolf growled and backed away, running toward the deer. The shrewd bastard knew when to stop losing. With my heart still racing, I watched it disappear into the woods. I remained planted, my muscles taut in a protective position, my gaze darting between the area where it disappeared and the thick forest surrounding me. I wasn't ready to let my guard down just yet. Not after I almost lost my head to that careless jerk. I finally let out a breath to calm the pounding in my head as the silence drew on and it appeared that the wolf would not return. Instinctively, I reached up and scratched at my neck, frustrated by the constant, crawling itch that was consuming my skin. I realized then that this was more than a small annoyance. No, like wildfire, this shit was spreading quickly. There was a fierce, unrelenting heat that burned through every inch of my body that came into contact with that fucking shrub. My face and hands were covered in hives. I grimaced in frustration as my fingers clawed ferociously. I tried to scratch away the constant itching by swiping at the swelling and muttering, "Fuck," through clenched teeth. But like some cruel joke, it only made it worse. Then the headache came on, pounding, sharp, and unrelenting. The buzzing flies around me also didn't help. They dared to land on me, fly by fly, bug by bug, and I was powerless to stop them. I cursed a lot, angry at every little annoyance. I tried to silence the flies by blasting a handful of them with a quick flick of my wrist, sending them flying in all directions. However, my headache was becoming worse, my head was hurting more and more, and I lost my temper. I spit out, "Damn it all to hell," my voice cracking under the strain. I clenched my fists, my frustration erupting into an uncontrollable rage. All I wanted was some silence, goddamn it. I got this bullshit instead. I just wanted the pain to fucking stop because it felt like my skin was melting off. When I need that nerd, where the devil is he? Really, if he can't come up with some relief for this mess, what good is his enormous bag? I snarled in exasperation as my eyes began to itch uncontrollably. Usually, scratching would only make it worse. I therefore made an effort to divert my attention from the burning by hurling explosions at flies and swearing under my breath. Then suddenly, like some obnoxious little shadow, that damn Deku shows up. When I first saw him, I felt a little more at ease, but he then offered me allergy medication. That meant something to me. I saw the innocent way he looked at me, as if he were doing me a favor. Yes, exactly. I'm not going to go so far as to beg for his assistance. He is merely a minor extra in my narrative. No, don't do that. He is merely a stepping stone on my journey to success. I don't require his fucking medication. I'm capable of managing this on my own. However, the temptation was present and was gnawing at me. The agony persisted, and to be honest, the prospect of relief was very alluring. Why in the world can't I help myself and swallow my pride for once? Heroes are supposed to give help, not accept it. The code is that. I sneered at his suggestion that I should trust him, having already made up my mind. He sprayed my face with water without warning. I was frozen in disbelief. What on earth just took place? Was Deku there? The same stuttering, mumbling, mild-mannered little nerd? Was it brave of him to squirt me with water? Or was it an accident? Does it really matter? Really? Does this prick even have the courage to consider that? It seems that he does. It spoke volumes about him that he actually did it. When did the tiny, squalid pipsqueak gain the courage to do this? I went from being shocked to being enraged and disgusted. The rage burning behind my eyes must have been visible to him. He tries to flee after humiliating me by dodging and running away like a coward when I unleash a flurry of explosions. After humiliating me, does he really believe he can get away with it? As if I'd overlooked that. No way. Crossing that line will cost him. I will see to it that he understands the consequences of playing me, the humiliation of the king of explosions. He has a lot of work ahead of him. He stopped by a downed tree and looked back to see where I was. I balled my fists, preparing to snatch him by his dumb collar, but he leapt up like a fucking acrobat. He ripped off a nearby tree and threw it at me with a vicious heave before I could react. I was trapped beneath the huge, ragged wood by the bastard. As soon as he got close enough, my muscles tensed, ready to tear him to pieces. I thrashed against the wood, trying to break free, but my mind was clouded by anger and exhaustion. With each desperate struggle, that constant itching on my skin grew worse, as if my flesh were tearing itself to shreds, and my thumping heart reverberated in my ears. Breathing became more difficult as my throat felt constricted and tight. And Deku came over once more right when I thought I could stand it no longer. Pain and that damned, annoying itch took away all of my rage. I'm not even sure if I was just tired or angry anymore. I just wanted to sleep. My heartbeat matched the pounding of my aching head, which pleaded for relief. Then his voice broke through the commotion and I heard him roar. My headache ached more intensely, pounding in time with his words, but I still wanted to yell at him and tell him to stop talking. After he left, I continued to scratch at my neck in an attempt to block out the burning. I gripped my head tightly, trying desperately to stop the pounding. With each passing second, the agony grew more intense, threatening to break me. I assumed he would simply ignore my pain and go on looking for the next clue without me. However, he returned with medication instead. I swallowed the pills, thankful and irritated all at once, despite my confused, battered mind. I staggered after him until we arrived at our starting point. My throat no longer felt constricted, and oddly, my headache began to subside, the pain fading to a bearable ache. The medication was effective. When he handed me the wet towels, I felt a wave of relief wash over my hive-covered skin. The relief they provided almost brought me to tears. I applied the cream to my hands with caution, being careful around the areas that were bleeding, so as not to exacerbate the pain. I considered asking him to assist me in putting it on my face and neck, but pride, stupid, stubborn pride, repelled me. I turned him down when he offered. I would never allow a weakling to touch me. The constant itching persisted as I heedlessly applied the cream to my own face and neck. That damned feeling would not go away, no matter how much I tried to stop it. Hey, Kachan. Can you do me a favor? Find me 4 big, heavy rocks, something solid and sturdy. Please? Deku then squeaked out of nowhere. I blinked as I tried to concentrate despite my brain thumping. Already annoyed by the sound of him, I managed to rasp, "What for?" His voice was strangely upbeat, almost naive. "I need them to secure the tent so we can eat our lunch in the shade. It'll help with your allergies too." I groaned loudly in frustration, already irritated by his voice. My headache was getting worse, and even the most basic conversation was making my temples hurt more. With the weight of exhaustion bearing down on me, I muttered, "Whatever. Just keep your volume down if you can't shut up," in a low voice. I just wanted to rest for a little while, lie down, close my eyes, and forget this nightmare. Even though I checked my watch and it had only been a few minutes, it felt like I had been wandering for hours, my head pounding more intensely with each step. It was a disconcerting moment of clarity. He had already pitched the tent in that small window and vanished inside. Feeling more exhausted with every step, I walked in after him, leaving the rocks at the entrance. Deku was searching through his bag inside, laying out 2 cups of noodles and some rice balls that were most likely intended for us. His steady, caring voice both annoyed and comforted me in my battered state as he handed me a cold compress and 2 pills, saying, "I only have 1 cold compress, but you can use the wet towels on other areas." He left me alone with my whirling thoughts and went outside to tend to the rocks I had brought without waiting for my answer. With the painkillers starting to take effect, I took my lunch slowly and applied a cold compress to my sore head. My eyelids felt heavy, and my breathing became a little easier thanks to the tense shade and the compress's cold relief. I closed my eyes and fell into a languid, worn-out sleep, thankful for the momentary break from the turmoil and suffering. The sound of crows cawing, their harsh cries piercing the still evening air, woke me up. A light breeze tinged the air, and the landscape was bathed in a warm, pinkish hue from the waning sunlight. I stretched slowly, still feeling the slow fog in my head and the pain behind my eyes. As I moved, I saw Deku on duty, sitting just outside the tent, his eyes searching the horizon with a calm concentration that comforted me in some way. As I looked down, I noticed the wet towels that had been laid out for me for comfort were now falling off my lap. I was suddenly aware that Deku must have been constantly changing and replacing the towels to keep them cool while I slept. Even though my head was still hazy from the medication, I was more moved by his thoughtfulness than I wanted to admit. He looked at the rustling sound over his shoulder. "How are you feeling now?" he asked politely, his gentle face softened with concern and his voice steady but kind. "Better," I said slowly, my words thick and slow. The ache had subsided enough to allow me to breathe more easily, but my head was still hazy from the pills. Even though I was still exhausted, it felt good to be at ease, as if a burden had finally been lifted. "Good. The sun is about to set. If you're up for it, we can continue our search for the second clue. If not, I can scout around for a bit and come back here. We can't travel in the dark since I need light to set up our tent. So, what do you think, Kachan?" I made the decision to investigate the matter myself. I pushed myself upright, wincing slightly as the motion sent a dull throb through my skull. As I stood out of the tent, I looked toward the horizon. Clouds painted in pinks and purples, swirling and shifting as they moved across the sky, created an amazing display of color as the sun dipped lower. Just watching the clouds drift was stunning, almost enthralling. However, I was aware that the peaceful scenery couldn't keep us from our task. I firmly said, "What do you mean you're going alone?" "I'm coming with you," in a rough but determined voice. With comprehension in his eyes, Deku nodded. "Okay, so here's the plan. We're on the eastern side of the mountain, and we're short on time. I'll search the northern slope while you take the southern slope. No matter what we find, we each search for half an hour then return here. I'll build a fire to guide us back to this spot." His tone was calm but firm as he carefully outlined the plan. In order to build the campfire, a tiny light in the encroaching darkness, I assisted him in gathering some dry twigs and stones. The flame's softly flickering light created dancing shadows on the trees. When everything was prepared, I carefully made my way through the growing darkness in the direction I had been given. The surrounding forest was alive, with obnoxious creatures scuttling and yelling. Elephants rumbled through the underbrush, monkeys chattered from the treetops, and eagles screeched overhead. I forced myself to ignore their annoyance, keeping my eyes on the hunt for Serpent River. The sky darkened and the trees became taller and more imposing as the sun continued to set. It became more difficult to follow the smoke from our campfire as the shadows grew longer. He was correct, though I hated to admit it. I couldn't succeed on my own in following the smoke through this labyrinth of soaring trees and dwindling light. My muscles tensed from the effort. I reluctantly began to make my way back toward the tent. When I finally reached the tent, Deku was nowhere to be seen. As the minutes passed interminably, a nagging feeling of unease started to creep in and the silence surrounding the camp felt heavy, even oppressive. I looked frantically in the direction of the darkening woods outside, hoping to spot him. Why had he taken so long? Why hadn't he returned yet? Was he lost in the forest, with its twisting paths, tangled undergrowth, and shadows that seemed to change and breathe with their own life? The dense, winding forest resembled a labyrinth. Even with the dim smoke curling from our campfire acting as a beacon, anyone could easily lose their sense of direction here. Worry tightened my stomach. What if the forest floor was covered in prickly brambles and vines, trapping him somewhere? What if he had been attacked by a wild animal? What if he was hurt and no one was around to hear him yelling for assistance? My heart pounded in my chest at the thought. I began to pace back and forth as worst-case scenarios raced through my head. Even though my hands were shaking, I told myself, of course, I'm not worried for him. I simply don't want him to experience anything that might land me in hot water. If not, Aizawa-sensei will undoubtedly and without hesitation lay the entire blame on my shoulders. I whispered, barely audible above a whisper, into the stifling silence, "Come on, Deku. Where are you?" My palms were sweaty, my throat was dry, and every second seemed to drag on forever. The woods surrounding me appeared to go on forever, the shadows getting darker and longer every second. A bone-chilling howl, sharp, guttural, and full of a raw, primordial threat, then broke the stillness and reverberated through the trees. It sent a chill down my spine as it cut like a knife through the night air. My muscles tensed reflexively as the sound echoed through my bones, causing my breath to catch in my throat. Driven by an almost unrelenting sense of urgency to cover as much ground as possible before the sun dipped below the horizon, I charged across the lush, rolling bushland with my full cowl activated. Every second mattered. The next clue might be waiting somewhere along the serpentine Serpent River, and I knew I couldn't afford to slow down. Nevertheless, there was a part of me that wished I could stop and enjoy the view, the lush greenery, the aroma of new soil, the soft sound of leaves rustling in the wind. I couldn't help but feel a twinge of regret that I had to keep going even though the scenery was so lovely. However, I trusted my gut when I sensed the clue was close by. I quickly scanned the terrain for any indication of the river. Despite the almost calming sounds of the songbirds' calls resonating overhead, I made myself remain vigilant. A wolf's howl in the distance served as a reminder that this was a dangerous and living wilderness, and I had to respect its strength. I had a mission, though, so I couldn't let these serene sounds divert my attention. I felt a twinge of annoyance as the clouds overhead turned into vivid pink and orange hues. I wanted to pause, take a deep breath, and enjoy this brief moment of breathtaking scenery, but I knew better. I had to take quick action because time was running out. I am beautiful and pure, but I come from muddy places. People adore me because of my spiritual charm and good looks. Before I close the store for the day, come get your next clue. It seems to me that the second clue is located close to the Serpent River. The feeling grows stronger the more I mentally recite those words. Serpent River must be the name. The term, muddy places, instantly conjures up images of bodies of water. It implies that the next clue is located close to a body of water, most likely a pond or river, where muddy conditions are common. When I think of, people love me for my looks, I picture something bright and eye-catching, like a flower or plant that sticks out in the muddy landscape. Something that blooms or is visible during a specific time is conjured up by the phrase, I close the shop for the day. For example, a flower that opens at dawn and closes at dusk, or maybe a plant that is most visible during particular hours. When I consider everything, I am drawn to the Serpent River's white lotus. Famously linked to tranquility and purity, the white lotus evokes feelings of beauty and spiritual allure. It frequently lives in murky or muddy waters, but it rises above them, pristine and magnificent. The white lotus, a well-known symbol along the Serpent River, is a perfect fit. Serpent River is something I've read about. It was more than just its shape that gave it its name. No, it is both beautiful and dangerous. Like a living thing, the waterway looped back on itself, carving deep bends into the ground. It resembled a sinuous snake slithering languidly across the landscape from above. However, I was aware. Predators were hiding beneath that false calm, including copperhead snakes hiding among fallen leaves and snapping turtles with beaks sharp enough to cut off a finger, patiently waiting for their prey. Even the air was dangerous, with swarms of mosquitoes buzzing around, ready to bite. I couldn't forget that the river had earned its reputation. I continued despite the dangers because I knew the next clue was not far away. I searched intently for a quarter of an hour before I finally saw the Serpent Rivers gleam through the trees in front of me. My pulse accelerated. It must be present. With my mind racing with anticipation, I forced my way through the undergrowth. Then I staggered into a tiny clearing, and my breath caught at what I saw. There, surrounded by old, twisted roots that gripped the beach like claws, a silent, black pool reflected the fading light. Lotus flowers, white and pink, delicate and calm, floated on the water. It was nearly flawless. Is this the location, really? With my heart racing, I pondered. As I scanned the area in search of the next clue, I abruptly noticed movement, dark, scaly shapes that were hiding just below the surface. I felt my stomach tighten. Crocodiles. They waited patiently for prey, more than 10 of them, their eyes still, hidden in the murky depths. My forehead pricked with cold sweat. That's precisely why I need to exercise caution. I was aware that I couldn't approach that pool while those predators were there. I could join the river's deadly reputation with just one mistake. I experienced both fear and awe. Even though the beauty was captivating, I had to remind myself that there was danger lurking beneath the surface. I knew I had to return to camp before darkness engulfed the wilderness because the sun was rapidly setting. Knowing I couldn't take the chance, I reluctantly turned away from the enticing sight of the lotus blossoms. In an attempt to calm myself, I inhaled deeply. Izuku, pay attention. I had to return safely and leave the scene undisturbed. I looked at my watch. I'm running late. I rushed, tracing the thin line of smoke from our campfire that hid the encroaching darkness. I accelerated using my quirk, full cowl, battling the weariness and the encroaching darkness. Every dozen trees or so, I stopped to make a trail for tomorrow by wrapping strong zip ties around thick branches. Although it took a while, I knew it was essential. This forest was too unpredictable for me to take the chance of getting lost in the dark. Returning with these sporadic stops was taking longer, and as the sun dipped below the ragged horizon, the gloom grew steadily darker. Without the guiding smoke, I might have lost my way. With my heart racing, I slowed down, watching for any indication of the camp. Then, at last, I emerged into the clearing through the final row of trees. Everything was softly reddened by the dying ember's faint glow, and I released a breath I hadn't known I'd been holding. I felt a wave of relief. I had finally returned. My relief, however, was fleeting. I noticed Kachan getting ready to go. With a small bag slung over his shoulder, he stood close to the tent, alert and tense. His voice sounded like a thunderclap, raw and angry, before I could even comprehend what was happening. "What were you doing? What the hell took you so long, shitty pipsqueak? Were you knocked out cold? I've been waiting here for over half an hour?" His words struck me like a kick to the stomach. Birds flitted in panic as the sound reverberated through the silent forest. My body tensed, trembling as though I had been hit by his rage. Not only was his anger audible, but it was also palpable, engulfing me like an unstoppable storm. Despite my desire to back off, I made myself stand tall, even though my voice was shaking. I managed to say, "Kachan, I'm sorry," while gasping for air. "I found the Serpent River, and just marking my way back took longer than I thought. That's all." His jaw tightened and his eyes narrowed. "You should have done something to let me know that you'd be late. That's the flaw in your plan. That's why you shouldn't be making plans. I'm in charge. You will follow me, understand?" Feeling the weight of his words pressing into me, I nodded frantically in an attempt to diffuse the tension. "Why yeah, Kachan," I muttered in a small voice. With hesitation, I then ventured to inquire, "Were you worried about me?" A small part of me held onto the hope that the Kachan I knew was still there, hidden beneath his tough exterior. That perhaps, just possibly, this rage was a cover for something more serious. That perhaps after I got my quirk, he had once again taken an interest in me. His eyes briefly widened in surprise, as though I had taken him by surprise. But then, as if I had said something completely ridiculous, his face twisted into a sneer, disgust flickering across his features. He yelled, "What? No way, shitty nerd. I don't care if you get lost or whatever. I just don't want anything happening to you that could get me in trouble. You can go wherever the fuck you want. I'm happy as long as you're away." Or perhaps not. He remains the same Kachan from before. Despite my repeated assurances that he didn't mean it, those words still stung. I wasn't prepared for how hard his words struck. I tried to contain the sting by clenching my fists. I swallowed forcefully, attempting to conceal the pain in my chest. "Okay, I'm sorry, Kachan," I muttered feebly as I looked down. "Let's just go back to the tent and have dinner." Without a word, he turned abruptly on his heel and stomped forward, grunting in response. Although I felt the weight of his silence pressing down on me, I silently followed him, the sound of his footsteps blending with the trees' whispers in the distance. I still hold on to the hope that, despite my tough exterior, there was something, anything, that was concerned about me. However, I might have been deceiving myself once more. Perhaps I was still holding on to that belief from my youth, wanting desperately to see the kindness I believed he had hidden beneath his rage. I ducked down by the campfire's dying embers and got my ramen cup out of the tent. The light from the fire was dying down, flickering feebly against the growing darkness. In an attempt to heat my styrofoam cup without setting the paper on fire or scorching my fingers, I carefully held it over the remaining embers. As I waited and listened to the soft crackle of dying wood, the fire's glow gave my face a slight orange tint. His voice was rough but not as hostile as before as he asked, "What are you doing?" I looked at him as he stood outside the tent, observing me from a distance with a glint of interest in his eyes. In an attempt to sound informal, I said softly, "Oh, I'm just heating up my cup using the last flames from the fire." My voice sounded a bit more steady than I had anticipated, most likely because I was concentrating on something straightforward, something that restored my sense of normalcy. I felt Kachan's presence behind me as I was ready to gently blow on the flames to coax a bit more heat. I tensed reflexively as his footsteps drew closer. "Come here, I'll do it," he said sternly, his voice slightly softer. "Thick head. Clumsy as you are, you'll only burn the cup and your stupid noodles." After a moment of hesitation, I passed my cup to Kachan and watched as he used his explosion quirk to heat his hands in a controlled burst rather than a destructive blast. Instead of the explosive blasts he could produce, his palms glowed a soft orange warmth. It was a rare instance of his thoughtfulness, and I couldn't help but be a little taken aback. Steam rose as he carefully warmed the broth to the ideal temperature, holding the cup in his heated palms before returning it. It was a strangely normal scene, almost serene. It was almost as if he cared at that moment. In his own rough style, as if he was worried. Perhaps this was a sign, I thought, that our relationship was beginning to change, to become more than habit or competition. Or was I simply reading too much into a basic act of civility? Perhaps I was, as usual, exaggerating the situation. However, I couldn't help but feel that perhaps, just possibly, Kachan's roughness was a sign of concern. I pointed to the shadowy darkness surrounding us after supper and explained that one of us had to remain vigilant all night. After dark, Kinnigan Hill could be dangerous because of the strange noises coming from the brush and the glowing eyes that watched us from the shadows. "I'll take the first watch," I offered, attempting to appear more assured than I were. However, Kachan crossed his arms and shook his head. "No, I slept for a few hours earlier after taking pain medication. I'm fine, you need to rest." After hesitating, I nodded, realizing how obstinate he was. I snatched up my pain reliever and sprayed my aching joints and muscles. A portion of the pain was relieved by the familiar cool feeling. My mind was already leaning toward sleep, and my body felt heavy. I climbed into my sleeping bag, and almost instantly fell into a deep, dreamless sleep as the fatigue finally caught up with me. The first light began to softly filter through our tent's nylon walls as I woke up. A soft, golden radiance permeated the fabric, creating delicate patterns. I lay there for a while, breathing softly and taking in the quiet sounds of the forest awakening. Kachan, who must have been on guard all night, was at the door, sleeping lightly at the threshold. He appeared worn out even when he was sleeping, with his shoulders hunched and his eyes somewhat drained. After a brief moment of hesitation, I decided it was time to give him a little more time to rest and carefully sat up. I spoke softly so as not to startle him. "Kachan," I whispered, "come lie down inside the tent and get some more sleep. I'll take over the watch now." Dazed with exhaustion, he woke up and staggered to my empty sleeping bag. He fell onto it without thinking, his limbs spread wide. In order to help him sleep a little more comfortably, I hastily covered him with an extra shawl before stealthily sneaking outside to monitor our surroundings. I wanted him to sleep properly. When his allergic reaction went away yesterday, he appeared so exhausted. I remained vigilant, listening to every sound of leaves rustling and a twig snapping. I didn't want to overlook any indications of danger because the forest was alive. Being the one taking the watch now was odd, but to be honest, it felt natural. In order for us to concentrate on our work without concern, I wanted him to get better and regain some strength. It was about 8 in the morning when the sun rose higher. The forest floor was speckled with golden spots as the morning light streamed through the canopy, casting an almost enchanted glow over our campsite. Birdsong, a cheerful and lively contrast to the tense silence we had endured, had replaced the eerie silence of the night. At last, Kachan came out of the tent, looking, at least physically, refreshed and stretching briskly. I used the opportunity to hastily fold the nylon tent and pack our equipment while he went to relieve himself in the bushes behind the tent. Although my hands moved on their own, I kept my mind sharp because I knew that this forest was unpredictable and I shouldn't let myself get too comfortable. His eyes had a new spark when he came back, one that was focused and sharp. He appeared prepared to handle whatever came next, for some reason. I led the way because I remembered the route to the river. Unbelievably, Kachan went along without objecting, which I interpreted favorably. Perhaps he was beginning to have a little more faith in me. The sound of the rushing water increased as we approached the river, serving as a continual reminder of our proximity. A strong oak along the bank was my choice, and I carefully hid my bag high in its branches, out of any crocodile's reach. Kachan was right behind me, his intense gaze searching the water. At last, we reached the serene lotus pond, which was glistening in the sunlight. Both of us began looking for our second clue. Suddenly, something caught Kachan's keen eyes. "There," he said with a firm voice, tangled in the vines beyond the pond. "There's a wooden box. Just like our first clue." After squinting, I was able to make out it in the daylight, tucked away in the dense foliage. I must have missed it in the darkness last night. To be honest, I probably missed something that obvious because I was too preoccupied with avoiding getting lost. It appears to be the creation of Kamui Wood's sensei, that shrewd manipulator of wood. With a wall of crocodiles hiding close by, the question now was how to get it back. Kachan quickly replied, "One of us needs to distract the crocodiles while the other grabs the clue. Just like last time. Think. What can we use? Offending them might work, but they're vicious, sharp teeth, powerful jaws. Feeding them could be dangerous, too. Besides, I don't think I'd be able to throw enough food to distract them without getting too close. And offending them might just make them angrier." "Shut up, nerd," Kachan said abruptly, his voice tinged with annoyance. "Your babbling is already distracting them." Some of the crocodiles turned their heads toward us, their eyes shining with predatory focus, and I froze, my heart racing. Fantastic. It was exactly what I needed. My anxious chatter could be the end of our relationship. Technique needs to be changed. I forced myself to calm down and swallowed hard. Now there's no time to panic. We needed to do this precisely. There was no room for failure. We took a step back and crouched behind a clump of bushes to watch the action. In an attempt to calm myself, I inhaled deeply. I couldn't afford to make a mistake right now. The tense silence was then broken by Kachan's voice. He smirked and said, "I have an idea that'll get the clue and maybe even help us get dinner," his face confident but dangerous. I blinked, my heart racing with curiosity and fear. I hoped whatever he had planned was better than my apprehensive suggestions. I smirked and said, "I have an idea that'll get the clue and maybe even help us get dinner." I looked around and saw that we could use the crocodile's acute senses against them. I explained my plan and led Deku behind some bushes. He agreed without hesitation, and we gathered supplies for the next hour. After everything was in order, we took our places, me on one side of the riverbank, watching the crocodile's sluggish, avaricious faces from atop a sturdy tree only 5 feet away. Deku took cover in the dense underbrush near the reptiles on the other side. He collected his crude tools and waited patiently, looking to me for the signal. In order to make ripples in the otherwise motionless water, I started dropping stones that I had previously gathered at precise intervals. The expanding rings shook the surface with every impact, attracting the attention of the vigilant predators right away. Shortly after, the first crocodile began to approach my distraction. Before long, half of them were looking straight below me for the source. I had a second bag because I knew that eventually I wouldn't be able to entice them all with ripples alone. I reached inside, picked up a tiny, wriggling fish, and tossed it into the battle. Chaos broke out as soon as it hit the water. In their desperate attempt to grab the prize, the crocodiles thrashed wildly, turning the water into froth. Their jaws snapped shut around empty water as they fought for position, their strong tails whipping back and forth. The remaining crocodiles under my tree were attracted to the fish, which worked like a magnet. I dropped the largest fish I had as a sign to Deku. He departed swiftly but stealthily, ripping through the vines that ensnared our second clue. He understood that I had told him to keep quiet. As Deku worked to free the box, I kept dropping fish here and there, trying to keep the crocodiles occupied. Just next to Deku, a huge piece of vine suddenly falls into the water. It all freezes. Time seems to have stopped for a moment. Those crocodiles, the swamp, and us. The disturbance causes some of those damn monsters to turn their heads, but they are too damn hungry to care. As they wait for their next meal, their eyes remain fixed and their stomachs growl. They've already got their sights set on me, so there's no need to pursue a new danger. With my heart thumping like a drum in my chest, I sternly whisper, "What the fuck are you doing, dumbass?" "Sorry," is what Deku says as he looks up at me, his eyes wide, like some scumbag caught stealing candy. Trying to keep their focus on the tiny, wriggling snack while Deku continues to cut those thick-ass vines with that shoddy makeshift nail of his, I toss another fish into the water. We need that vine cut, but it's tough, it's thicker than most ropes. If that box is glued in place, it's our fallback option. However, I am aware that if those snapping vines break, they will create a tremendous amount of noise, which will attract those crocodiles directly to Deku's vulnerable ass. When another fish dives into the swamp, everyone's attention turns to me because I now have their ravenous eyes. With the crude blade squeaking against the fibrous plants, Deku continues to work, scraping away at the vines. We must act quickly before those jerks grow bored with their little fish snacks and return their attention to the defenseless, bare-chested boy in the tree. As I was organizing this, I instructed Deku to find a strong branch and use a small, heavy rock as a hammer to whittle one end of a makeshift nail into a sharp point. I advised Deku to have those extra tools on hand just in case, even though he already had a blade to cut vines, as an emergency tool. After all, who carries that much load? Because we need heavy-duty shit in a situation like this. Something that can give us a damn chance or break through thick vines. His peculiarity. Too dangerous, too loud. We required accuracy and stealth. If you make one mistake, it's over. Deku yells abruptly and strikes the ground forcefully. I watch as 2 enormous crocodiles slither frighteningly fast toward him as his legs become tangled. Deku struggles, his face etched with fear and desperation. The eyes of those creatures narrow, icy, cunning, and poised to tear him in two. Fuck, I think with a sinking heart. Now he's really in danger. Even though I know he's trapped, I yell angrily, "Run, Deku!" But I can't stand there. Trying to slow the crocodiles with branches, I shout, "We'll come back for the damn box later." But they are too preoccupied with their defenseless prey to care. They are rapidly approaching. I watch as Deku struggles mightily to break free, holding onto that box as if it were his only hope. He is nearly at the mercy of the predators. Because of their size and speed, he is frozen. My stomach turns. I can't let this happen. Without thinking, I leap directly in front of Deku, and as the crocodiles emerge from the water, I blast them in the eyes with a blast of explosive power. They are rendered blind by the shock of my attack, and as their heads flail wildly, they fall back into the swamp in agony and bewilderment. My opening is that. I seize Deku's blade and wildly wave it in an attempt to cut the vines that are entangling him. But my blade isn't cutting through these thick vines. I require an alternative strategy. Quick! I change strategies. In an attempt to destroy those vines, I detonate tiny explosions around Deku's legs. As the fibrous hell is torn apart, the ground rumbles. Just as those crocodiles recover and lunge once more, I grab the box out of Deku's shaking hands. I yell, "Deku, smash the lotus now!" and retreat as the enraged jerks approach with steel trap-like jaws. Deku jumps high into the air, winding up for his signature move, eyes blazing. "Detriad smash," he yells, descending with a force that could shatter the earth. When his fist strikes the water, the shockwave travels outward like a blow to the swamp's center. The crocodiles by the bank are thrown sideways onto the ground, and the lotus blossoms burst into a cloud of devastation. The ones nearer Deku? They flipped onto their backs, blinking like fools, stranded and confused. As anticipated, they begin to flee, creeping back into the dark depths like cowards, most likely sensing that a larger predator has just barged into their territory. The shockwave causes me to lose my balance on the muddy bank, but then I feel the crocodile's tail slap me in the ankle. Like a damn lightning bolt, searing pain shoots up my leg, and I scurry away while muttering curses. However, I continue to watch those ruthless creatures. They're fleeing, returning to the river, far from the spot where Deku just delivered that vicious blow. Excellent. For now, that's one issue resolved. After his explosive entrance, Deku emerges from the churned-up water, completely soaked. When his wide eyes find me gripping my leg, he accelerates and rushes over. With worried green eyes, he falls to his knees beside me. He asks in a shaky voice, "Kachan, what happened? Where are you hurt?" As if he's already picturing the worst, he's practically begging for a closer look. With a voice strained from the pain and frustration, I yell, "Is this the way you work quietly? Can't you comprehend a simple task of staying silent?" With every sentence, the volume rose. "Fuckhead. What if I had our roles reversed? You would have ruined that too. Falling into the river, becoming the main course for those bloodsucking monsters. I gave you one fucking job, stay quiet, stay alive, and you managed to screw it up, as usual. What if I hadn't thought of the next step? Forget the clue. Forget becoming a hero. This would have been our last day on this shitty planet. Stupid Deku. You were supposed to be the nerd, right? I know, and I'm very sorry," are repeated like a broken record as Deku keeps his head down and murmurs, "I'm sorry, Kachan." What the hell happened there? Why did you scream like a little girl when you were supposed to stay silent? I ask, my voice rasping. To be honest, I'm worn out from the fight and the nonsense I just said. Deku takes a while to respond. Fury erupting, I yell, "Speak up." Damn it. When he does look up, his voice is steady but quiet. I mistook a snake for a vine and nearly cut it, until it suddenly struck at me. I yelped and released my grip, allowing the snake to slither away before it could bite. Fuck, oh. Just before he became the prey of those creatures, he nearly got bitten by a poisonous snake. And now, like a crazy person, I'm tearing into him. Crushing guilt strikes me like a kick to the gut, and my heart sinks. I didn't consider what he was truly risking. I was just angry and letting out my frustration. I shouldn't be adding to the hell the guy has already endured today. He's shaking a little now, perhaps from the near-death experience, the shock, or the water. Or the totality of it. There's nothing to say, so I say nothing. That I am a jerk? Yes, I now understand. I feel like a jerk now, even though I know I was harsh because I was angry and my adrenaline was still pumping. TCH. In any case, we must relocate. Now. I gritted my teeth, speaking in a rough but steady voice. We find a safe place first. We deal with this box after that. Go get the dinner from that tree and meet me on the other side, I say, huffing lightly to hide my pain with a forced breath. Ignoring it, Deku nods silently, gets up, and hands me a hand. I get up on my own, flinching a little as I put weight on that ankle, and pain shoots up my leg like fire. Deku takes notice, his brow furrowing with concern, but he doesn't argue. he simply nods and shifts into his full cowl, zipping through the trees with that determined look. When I land, I stumble a little, and Deku's eyes flick to me instantly, recognizing the way I land. Like I'm compensating for the injury, his concern heavy behind his eyes, but he stays focused. I grit my teeth, set off a few explosions in my palm, channeling raw power to blast myself across the river. The pain in my ankle screams at me, but I ignore it. Survival isn't about mercy. Deku doesn't waste any time when we finally arrive at the expansive oak, where our temporary hiding place is, and without being asked, he gets both of our bags, carries the weight, and hands me mine. I'm thankful. In fact, I'm thankful for anything that keeps me from collapsing at the moment, especially with that throbbing running through my entire leg. The rough bark presses against my back as I sink down next to the thick trunk, and I kick off my shoes, squirming, and carefully stretch my injured ankle out in front of me. The purple bruise blooming across my skin, fat and swollen, throbbing in a steady, annoying rhythm that makes me want to punch something. Deku quietly takes out a towel to dry himself off, then hands me a cup of ramen and his pain spray, which I accept with gratitude, knowing that I'll need the boost. In reality, how many cups do you have? Give me yours, I said nonchalantly, attempting to hide the pain in my voice. I'll preheat them. Despite the fatigue he was feeling, he said softly, I've got 4 more, and added, you can have 1 more if you want. I'm not bothered. Why do you have so many cups in the first place? I asked, blinking in surprise. Did you intend to spend a week or so camping here? I take out the 1 bag of biscuits I brought from my pack and give it to him. Did you bring just 1 pack for the 2-day assignment? He asked, looking surprised himself. His eyes enlarged, obviously shocked by my apparent lack of planning. A little defensive, I shrugged and said, I just wanted to get this done as quickly as possible. I don't want to spend any more time stranded here. His face flashed something. Hurt, perhaps? Disappointment? I saw it quickly, but I didn't say anything. I think he's overanalyzing again, and I roll my eyes inwardly. I hate him, of course, but I truly meant what I said, and I really just wanted this damn assignment to be finished, and to get better grades, of course, not to drag on. Working with Deku has only made me more irritated and annoyed, but after yesterday's terrifying events, when I was terrified of dying by scratching myself alone, I'm not quite as opposed to his company anymore. Not that I'd say that aloud. He is free to think whatever he wants. I have no control over his thoughts or emotions. I glanced at him eagerly to change the topic, saying, let's see what's in that box. Speaking of the assignment, bring it here. His voice, as long-winded as it was, seemed to steady him, calm his nerves. His face brightened, even though fatigue still lingered behind his eyes. I know what that means. It's time for him to start babble about the geeky details. To be honest, I don't mind. Oh, indeed. Earlier, I looked at the outside. This one differs from the previous one. It wasn't just the vines that held it in place, you know. In fact, roots were sprouting from this box as well. The work of Kamui Wood's sensei, without a doubt. He used it to anchor the wooden box firmly in the vine's grasp by sprouting roots from it, which is an amazing quirk. Compared to the last box, this one is much more robust. Kachan, take a look at the lock. It is more than a latch. Sliding this lever, turning that dial, and then flipping up the hinge cover is a multi-step puzzle. Like a flawless puzzle, the grooves fit together. Animals couldn't pass through, even if they tried to pry it open. Kamui Woods truly went above and beyond. The craftsmanship is amazing. He included all of these interlocking components to make forcing it open almost impossible. However, the locking mechanism also makes it possible for someone who knows the proper procedures to open it. It's quite ingenious how he made it safe from animals that might tamper with it while still being usable by the appropriate individual. This is truly incredible. His words flow in a steady stream, and surprisingly, it seems to help him relax. His trembling stops, the panic fading from his eyes, and a spark of excitement returns, like a child eager over a candy. This time, I don't interrupt, letting him ramble a bit more, partly to give him space, and partly because I feel guilty for not listening earlier. Anyway, I snap, open the box right now. We must concentrate on the internal clue. Kachan, you're right. Let's open it, he enthusiastically agrees. With a frown, I'm always right. You're right, Kachan. Let's open it, I said, maintaining my composure in spite of my nervousness. He scowled and crossed his arms in response, saying, I'm always right. I paused for a second, hoping that he would grab the scroll, as he usually did. However, he remained motionless this time. I turned the dial with slow, deliberate movements and slid the lever gently. The latch opened with a click. At the bottom, as before, was a rolled-up scroll. This time, however, there were two bright red flare guns nestled at the top. As my eyes widened at the sight, I suddenly remembered Aizawa-sensei's warning. You can send an SOS code from any checkpoint at any time if you feel like you can't go on or don't want to. He meant just that. I now realize that these difficulties are traps intended to test our limits rather than merely being puzzles. We almost lost our lives in the last one, and I was certain that the next trap would be even more extreme and dangerous. But after I made it through that terrifying experience, I was filled with a fierce determination. A determination to move forward and take on the next challenge head-on in order to demonstrate that we are the most qualified applicants for the rigorous hero training program. A determination that is also evident on Kachan's face. We're not yet prepared to give up. If the next challenge proved too much for one person to handle, the flare guns were ready. We still had fight left in us and hope. After a brief pause, I cautiously picked up the scroll and untied it. I moved a little so we could both see the hint. He was waiting with his eyes waiting intently on the parchment. But instead of reaching for it as he usually does, he did nothing. Why, I wondered. Why hasn't he taken it from me already? He seems as eager as I am to finally share the clue, so I'm shocked by his self-control. Despite my nagging curiosity, I chose not to take a chance. I started reading aloud instead. I am the tempting red and sweet fruit of knowledge. An autumn treat, hanging heavy on the bough. Watch out for the eager, keen hands that are reaching for me. For the juicy pleasures that are visible on me. You can stop and take a step back, because I possess the last clue to the coveted item you're looking for. Silence for a beat. Then Kachan's voice began to grow frustrated. Arg, there's another clue to solve? Can't this be the last one? We were supposed to be back by nightfall. I wanted to add that these challenges were tests of endurance as much as speed, so I gently reminded him. Aizawa-sensei said it could take 2 days or more. This isn't a test of speed. But I was silenced by his glare. We still have all day left. There's enough time, I said quietly after nodding. Do you have an extra set of clothes? He asked after giving me a brief glance. I stumbled. Yeah, I do. But can I ask why? Taken aback by his odd question. He yelled, so you don't freeze to death, dumbass. Go change out of those wet clothes while I heat up our noodles. I gave a sheepish nod, feeling both relieved and embarrassed. I quietly gathered my dry clothes and slipped into the woods to change in private. Kachan had warmed the noodles when I got back to our temporary camp. We ate in silence while I continued to think about the mysterious clue. It's obvious that it's a fruit. However, which one, red and sweet, could refer to any number of red fruits, such as dragon fruit, strawberries, plums, or cherries. Is this hill where they all grow? Most likely not. I let out an inward sigh. Dead end. I might want to try another section. The phrase, the hands that reach for me, implies that it is a tall tree. It doesn't narrow much, though. After all, trees are the source of all those fruits. What's the secret? I inhaled deeply while attempting to concentrate. Let's do something different. Fruit of knowledge is an obvious choice. It's apples. It must have been that. Suddenly, an imaginary light bulb flickered over my head, just like in a comic book. I realized the answer immediately. My heart was racing with excitement as I exclaimed, Kachan, I figured it out, it's... Then he interrupted bluntly, yeah, I know, apple trees. My heart fell. I blinked, taken aback by how fast he answered, as though he had known all along. I started to feel a dull ache of disappointment. I had been so confident and so close that I had almost experienced the excitement of solving it on my own. Now, it simply felt hollow. Did you figure that out too? I asked, forcing a tiny, apprehensive smile, trying not to show my disappointment but unable to control the pain in my voice. It hurt a bit more than I anticipated to realize that he had known all along. He gave me a brief, wry smile. His eyes glinted with that familiar teasing edge as he said bluntly, I didn't have to use a single brain cell. Your continuous blabbering did all the magic. Seriously, Deku. It's getting worse. Stop your mind's horses and finish your lunch before it gets cold. As I quickly finished my meal, I felt a strange mixture of pride and embarrassment, and my face burned hot, probably beet red. I was practically giddy with anticipation in my mind. I figured out the puzzle. I did it, even though it was supposed to be difficult, as simple as that. How does that describe me? That I'm getting closer to realizing my dream. I feel ecstatic, as if this minor triumph proves that I'm headed in the right direction. Moments like these serve as a reminder that despite my mistakes and self-doubt, I am still making progress. All I have to do is keep going and keep learning. With the stress of the day bearing down on me, we started packing our equipment once more. I discovered I was down to 2 water bottles as I was gathering my supplies. My voice was quiet as I called, "Kachan, wait." The idea that he might say no, which he frequently did, made my heart skip a beat, so I hurried to add, "It's really just in case. I feel better with a little extra. Do you mind if I run down to the river real quick and refill my empty bottles before we head out? Just 2 minutes. I won't take long, promise." He scowled as he started to leave. He curtly replied, "I have a full bottle you can share." "Thanks," I said quickly, "but I already have 2 filled." I knew from experience that dehydration was a serious problem out here, so I said, "I just want to top off the extra ones, just in case. The environment's harsh, and I'd rather be safe than sorry." We had to bring as much water as we could, even more than we anticipated using. His frown widened, and he gave me a suspicious look. "How many bottles did you drink yesterday?" After a moment of hesitation, I muttered, I used 2 bottles myself and 2 more were used on you," anticipating his usual caustic remarks. I thought he would make fun of me, say I was too cautious, or bring up yesterday's accident. Just as he had been irritated when I splashed him with water earlier, I knew he would become irritated with me fussing over water. However, after a tense moment of silence, Kachan grunted, "Whatever. Just make it quick and only fill them with fresh water." I felt a wave of relief. I quickly grabbed my empty bottles, my mind still replaying the mishap, how I splashed water on him to get his attention, the chase that followed. The look on his face made me believe that I had finally gone too far this time and that he would not pardon me. He seemed to be going for the kill, and I could almost see the rage in his eyes. I feared that I had provoked him too much. I shook my head, inhaled deeply, and ran toward the river. Eager to get us moving again and move past that moment, I poured cool, clear water into my bottles to the brim and rushed back. Leading the way, I excitedly explained that there was a pretty little apple orchard on the western slopes of Kinnigan Hill. About halfway up the hillside, a clearing appeared where a few dozen neat rows of apple trees were surrounded by sunlight that filtered through the canopy above. As it approached the orchard's location, the path gradually steepened into rocky, uneven terrain from its starting point on a gentle grassy slope. I warned that it might be dangerous to get to the orchard because I had heard from locals that landslides were common there. The hill's western face appears to have recently experienced a fire, and last week's intense rains weathered the rocks and made the slopes unstable. As we hiked through the dense forest, I kept my eyes on my compass to make sure we stayed on course because the trees were so tall. Our journey had a melodic backdrop thanks to the calming symphony of cicadas and birds calling to one another in the air. As Kachan hobbled a few steps behind me, the sound of twigs crunching beneath my feet reverberated loudly through the quiet forest. As he pushed his injured leg to support his weight, I could hear his labored breathing and the occasional soft grunt, despite his best efforts to conceal it. Even after hours of walking through the woods, Kachan refused to take a brief rest, his face fixed on a grim expression of resolve to finish the task. I followed our path. According to what I understand, there should be a clearing up ahead, a short break before the trail becomes a gentle ascent. We heard trumpets after a while of walking, which meant that an elephant was close by. It was obvious that we were getting close to a distressed animal as the trumpet blasts got louder. The trees dwindled, as I had predicted, and then abruptly gave way to a field of grass with wildflowers scattered throughout, swaying softly in the wind. An elephant stood almost still near a deep hole, its trunk held high as it frantically sounded distress calls. The elephant's apparent agitation piqued my interest, and I naturally moved away from Kachan to conduct my own investigation. He called after me, "Hey, where are you going?" But I continued to walk because my curiosity overcame my caution. The elephant's tiny black eyes were filled with panic and fear as I got closer. I noticed a tiny baby elephant, only a few weeks old, that had fallen into that deep hole and was unable to get out. The baby screamed for its mother and struggled to get away, reaching up with its trunk. Despite being unable to save her infant from the deep pit, the mother elephant persisted in her frantic trumpeting. "Kachan, we have to help the baby elephant," I begged. "Just look, the walls are too steep for it to climb out on its own. We really should do something. We can't just leave it like this." I hurriedly unzipped my bag in an attempt to find ropes. However, Kachan's voice interrupted my haste. He scowled angrily and snapped, "Are you insane? We don't have time for this bullshit. Do I need to remind you that we still have an assignment to complete by the end of the day? Fucking thickhead. We're leaving. Come on, stop wasting my time." "But Kachan," I began, my voice shaking with a mixture of guilt and desperation. It'll die if we don't help, please, it'll just take a few minutes. No, he screamed angrily. We are not staying a second longer and that's final, and don't you dare question me again or I'll blast you into pieces. I am still facing the consequences of your actions. Now start walking before I really lose my temper. As I watched him limping forward, his breathing ragged and painful, I winced, feeling the guilt wash over me once more. I looked at his gaunt appearance and felt regret and shame wash over me again. Knowing that I was partially to blame for our situation made me feel guilty. He was furious, but I couldn't leave this helpless animal. I clenched my fists and gave a firm shake of my head. I wouldn't turn away, but this is going to be a really difficult time. I am sorry you got hurt, Kachan, but that was not my intention. If you want to go ahead, I won't stop you, but I won't leave them. There. I've completed it. In order to comply with Aizawa-sensei's rules, he would either leave me, happy to have me out of his hair, or he would make me follow him. Frustrated, Kachan's face darkened and turned purple. His hands clenched, but I refused to back down because I was committed to helping the elephant no matter what. Even if it meant risking his wrath, the idea of abandoning it to suffer was intolerable. I had to give it a shot. I inhaled deeply before plunging into the deep hole, my heart racing, without waiting for his response. The baby elephant's eyes were wide with fear as it gazed up at me. I tried to reassure it that I didn't mean any harm by gently massaging its trunk and belly while whispering words of consolation. I carefully knelt down and wrapped the rope around its tiny frame. In a desperate attempt to reassure its mother, its quivering trunk reached up. Mother elephant trumpeted softly, as if she were begging for her baby's life, and watched me closely, her dark eyes full of hope and desperation. I used only 5% of my power to use my quirk, Full Cowl, and leapt out of the hole while desperately tugging on the rope. The infant elephant's eyes were wide with fear as it raised a few centimeters, its small legs thrashing in the air. It then fell back into the pit with a sickening thud. I was afraid I would break the rope, our last hope of survival, so I couldn't risk using more strength. Kachan's intense gaze was piercing my back, and I could feel his impatience practically radiating in waves. His voice was rough and commanding, and suddenly he was at my side. He barked, "Oi, shitty Deku. Let me pull the rope. You get down there and help lift that baby elephant up. You'll just break the rope with your strength, but the calf can take it. When are you gonna take this assignment seriously? Just hurry the hell up and do it." I looked at his injured leg and hesitated. "No, Kachan, I can't let you put pressure on your leg. You shouldn't strain yourself." He sneered, "Don't give me that, just get out of my way. You're wasting time, and that's the one thing we don't have right now." My heart began to race. I glanced back at the hole and then at the trunk of the mother elephant, her eyes determined and begging as she reached out toward us. A delicate yet promising idea ignited at that precise moment. "Wait," I said in a determined whisper, "it seems like she wants to help us." I swiftly wrapped the other end of the rope around her leg and gave her a comforting trunk rub. I steered her away from the hole carefully. Her trunk curled around the rope as soon as she realized what I was trying to do, and she began pulling it with all of her strength. I positioned myself behind the quivering calf and leapt back into the hole. I inhaled deeply, used all of my strength, about 15% of my total power, and raised the small, frail body in the direction of freedom. The seconds seemed to drag on forever. I could sense the tension in my muscles, the rush of adrenaline, and the hope that this moment would finally work out for us. The calf finally cleared the pit's edge and fell into a heap of relief in the grass after I gave it one last shove upward. Mother elephant blew a happy trumpet while tenderly stroking her calf with her trunk to check for wounds. Relief and gratitude lit up her eyes. Something inside of me melted as I witnessed their reunion, the unadulterated tenderness, the unsaid connection of love and relief. It took some time, courage, and effort on my part, but it was all worth it when I saw the mother and baby reunite in relief. The sight in front of me was touching and a tribute to the power of bravery and hope. I was enjoying the warmth of their reunion, lost in the moment, when I was startled back to reality by a harsh, piercing voice. Kachan said sharply and impatiently, "Are you just going to stand there all day? How will you make up for the time you've wasted?" I glared at Deku and yelled, "Are you just going to stand there all day? How will you make up for the time you've wasted? We're already racing against the clock, and here you are, wasting precious seconds like we're on some stupid safari vacation. Get moving, now." Even though I made every effort to stomp away, my damn leg hurt like 1,000 needles piercing my muscles. I staggered and limped pitifully, trying to conceal how fucking painful it was. The open field seemed to mock me as I yearned for the supporting trees, even though I had assumed it would help us travel the distance more quickly. My leg ached and throbbed with each painful step, the bones and muscles screaming out. Deku finally appeared to awaken from whatever daze he was in, quickly shouldering his pack to keep up with my slow pace. As he got closer, I suppressed a moan so as not to show any more vulnerability. We had to make up time, and I wasn't going to let my enraged injury be the cause of our failure. I pushed across the grassy plain, gritting my teeth against the pain. Deku continued to look at me worriedly, but he was wise enough to keep quiet as we went along. We ascended the mountain in gradual switchbacks for a considerable amount of time while walking in silence. The trail was so tight that I was barely able to maintain my balance. I was clinging to the mountainside for dear life, taking tiny steps, and hoping the ground wouldn't give out. We had to march arduously as the path wound its way up the steep incline. As we climbed higher and higher, loose rocks moved beneath our feet, making each step dangerous. Thankfully, today's weather was excellent. The sky was somewhat overcast, allowing the sun's calming rays to occasionally warm our skin. As we continued the difficult ascent, a gentle breeze kissed our sweat-drenched faces, bringing us sweet relief. When we eventually descended the first slope in the afternoon, we were confronted by the second, a monster that was taller and steeper than the first. At the base of the second trail, exhausted and with resentment simmering beneath the surface, we came to a stop. I glanced at Deku, who had a pale but determined face and was panting heavily. With a tired voice, Deku uttered, "Kachan. We should make our camp here. That way we can." I cut him off with a sharp voice. "Are you out of your damn mind? How many times must I tell you that we need to complete this assignment today? And yet you want to stop here?" Deku said in a strained but sincere voice, "Please, hear me out, Kachan. All I am saying is let's set up our camp and use our quirks to cover the rest of the ground quickly. It'll ease the strain on your leg. We will find the next clue and be back here in no time. What do you think?" he suggested. I wasn't sure if I should tell him to stop talking, that I could handle anything, or that I absolutely didn't need his advice. Or perhaps I should thank him for saving my foot because I was on the verge of passing out from the agony. But hold on, what on earth was that? Give him thanks? No fuck. I would never give him a thank you. Don't pitch the tent. Just stash your bag out of sight. We'll set it up when we get back. Got it? I growled at him at the end. Seeing that I had reached my breaking point, he nodded rapidly. Excellent. It should be straightforward and unambiguous. No needless nonsense. Then, as usual, he begins to ramble. Sure, Kachan. Let me grab a few things from my bag. Although, it's an emergency kit and I should carry all of it. Though I worry the straps might snap from my quirk's force, as you already know. In the meantime, you can use that pain relief spray I gave you earlier and take a painkiller as well. It's safe to take one now. It's been more than 4 hours since the last dose. Eating a few biscuits beforehand could help too since I know it must be hurting badly. I clenched my fists, feeling the fatigue seeping in. Well, let's see. What else should I carry? I am taking some rope, a blade, hooks, 2 water bottles, zip ties, and flare guns. Like some over-prepared pack mule, he continued to list everything he was packing. How many supplies, really, does he think we'll need? He seems to be carrying an entire house. Should I bring the medical kit from our first checkpoint too, just in case? I think I should just take it. After all, it is an emergency kit. I am leaving the clue boxes. I don't think we will need them. Kachan, can I borrow your bag to put all these things? Exhausted and annoyed, I just look at him. When he was packing up the tent this morning, I noticed that he already had an extra bag with him. So why would you want to borrow mine? Is he really attempting to carry all that stuff around as a precaution? Was he already aware of the impending hazardous checkpoints? Did he receive any insider information about the checkpoints from Aizawa? That's the only explanation for his huge bag that comes to mind. But to be honest, he starts off looking as lost as I do. God, I'm thinking too much again. I'm becoming more and more like Deku, worrying about unimportant things that shouldn't even concern me. I'm simply too exhausted to think clearly. Does it make a difference if he takes my bag? I don't have any hidden treasure with me. Even though it occasionally seems like going overboard, I know he's just trying to be ready for anything. I should just have faith in him, he is capable. I try to calm my anger and clear my head by taking a deep breath. There's no use getting worked up over something as simple as a request. He says, in a quiet voice that tries to sound comforting. I won't burden you with my stuff. You don't have to worry. If you allow me to borrow your bag, I will carry it myself. I promise, I won't touch any of your stuff, he stated. Yes, he was merely attempting to assist. He is, of course, Deku. Helpful, considerate, and kind. constantly watching out for other people. I think he noticed how tired I was. Now I feel so foolish, but it's irrelevant. I mumble. Whatever, as I pick up the medicine and biscuits and then slide the bag toward him. I squirm as my swollen foot slowly comes out when I remove my shoe. I apply the drug carefully, feeling the cold coating numb the affected area. He whispers, "I've got an extra bandage," as he looks at my wound and his eyes dart around in worry. "It'll keep your foot warm and cushioned." Searching through his pack, he extracts a gentle crepe bandage. I put it around my ankle so that it's snug but not so tight that it stops blood flow. It helps, but it's not much. My boot is still swollen, but at least I can walk without collapsing, so I manage to slide it back on and tie it loosely. Even though my foot was still sore, the brief respite to rest it and administer first aid had been quite beneficial. It's much easier to handle the pain now. We both let our eccentricities loose. Focus, blast, repeat are the gauntlets I typically use. However, I've perspired enough to have a supply of liquid nitroglycerin ready for detonation even without them. I release explosion after explosion, driving myself forward with unadulterated rage as I channel my pain into rage. That's the only way I know how to keep fighting and moving forward. We soon came to the edge of an old, deserted patch of apple orchard. It is surrounded by a weathered and beaten wooden fence. The small wooden shed to our right is surrounded by wooden harpoons and wicker baskets, which are likely harvesting implements used by the locals. However, there are fallen and decayed rotten apples all over the ground, providing the wildlife with an unharvested feast. The tree rows look wild and disheveled. The scent of summer's abundance fills the air, and the branches droop with unpicked fruit. The treacherous path left by a recent forest fire followed by intense rains makes it obvious that the villagers had not picked the fruit in a long time. The unpicked feast spread out in front of them had been exploited by the wildlife while they were away. As they eat the abundance of juicy, crisp apples, birds sing and squirrels chatter. Gazing at the endless rows of trees, I sigh. I mutter in a frustrated tone, finding that fucking clue out here. It's gonna take ages. No idea where to even start searching. I know it's going to be a nightmare to search through those overgrown, tangled trees, but this place is a mess. Finding a needle in a haystack is like that, except the haystack is alive and attempting to bite back. With a contemplative nod, Deku looks around the orchard that unfolds in front of us. He frowns and tilts his head, indicating that he is already thinking deeply and likely overcomplicating everything as usual. You're right, Kachan. This place is massive. We need a plan to cover more ground efficiently. I felt my muscles burn as I gritted my teeth. Wincing, I growl, "Oi, I know that stupid look on your face," and shuffle on. Spit it out. What's your brain cooking up? Deku's eyes brighten, almost bouncing with anticipation. I've got an idea, he exclaims with excitement. I'll stay on the ground. Check for disturbed soil, holes in the tree trunks, anything that might hide the clue. Meanwhile, you can use your quirk to propel yourself up into the trees and search from above. That way, you keep your leg elevated, and we cover more ground faster. He avoids my glare at the end of his proposal, presumably feeling bad about my leg and thinking I need his indulgence. As if I didn't already know he's concerned, constantly keeping an eye on my foot whenever I trip or groan in agony. Not important. He doesn't need to worry about me. And how the fuck can you honestly claim you won't miss it? I become irritated and speak a little more slowly this time. It was a few moments before I realized what he was suggesting. And when I did, I felt a great sense of dissatisfaction and pure annoyance. The plan isn't bad. It's a good one, hell. He can quickly cover the ground thanks to his quirk, but climbing the trees from the top would require a lot of work. However, staying high in the air will be more convenient for me than using my limp to check every tree trunk for any hidden cavities. It would also prevent further damage to my foot. Goddamn, that's a good idea, even though admitting it hurts. An absolutely brilliant one. And the fact that Deku came up with the idea only makes me detest it more. I detest being impressed and the fact that I'm mentally acknowledging it. Sometimes I really despise him, damn it. TCH, fine, I grudgingly murmur. We do it your way. But if you don't find that clue quick, I swear I'll blast you to the moon. Without saying a word, he simply nods sheepishly and glances at my foot before continuing to inspect the ground. I want to reassure him that I've got this and that he shouldn't worry too much. That he has already done enough to help and that it was only an accident. However, I don't have those words in my vocabulary. I don't talk like that. I'm not that kind of person. I choose to remain silent and concentrate on the task at hand. With a burst of explosions, I take off and jump from tree to tree, looking for anything unusual. Deku is meticulous, going through the dirt, inspecting the trunks, and looking at every inch of those untamed trees. After almost an hour, we've come to the opposite end of our starting point. I assumed that we had thoroughly examined every tree. But I want to punch something or someone in the face because I'm so angry. The frustration is erupting. With a tone full of annoyance, I ask, "Are you 100% sure the clue was pointing here? Is this the only apple orchard on this hill?" Muscles tense from the pointless search, my fists clench. "Yes, it's the only one. I'm sure of it," Deku responds with a deep scowl. Clue said beware of the hands. No villagers here. Fences in place. Must be somewhere unprotected, and all the apple trees are here, are some of the words I catch as he tilts his head and rubs his chin with his fingers while mumbling to himself. I try to block out Deku's panicked mumbling as I limp toward the fence line and turn away from the orchard. The fields are covered in long shadows as the sun begins to set. The leaves are stirred by a soft breeze that whispers secrets I'd rather not hear. I look out into the dark, twisted forest that lies beyond, dense and ominous, like a nightmare that is about to engulf everything. On this overcast day, its shadows are almost black. A few feet away, it feels like a completely different world, even though the sun's rays are warm and calming here. It seems almost symbolic to contrast the bright sun here with the darkness there. Something odd catches my attention as my gaze darts across the ground near the tree line. Some apples had only a few bites, while others had rotted away and turned to mush, crawling with insects. There aren't any animals over there, I realize. Not a single insect, bird, or squirrel. They're avoiding close contact. Why? Perhaps because of this forest. This is the only explanation for why apples would be left outside the fence. I shout, "Deku, I think we've got a lead," and gesture him toward me. He rushes over, looking down at the rotten apples in that ominous forest. He hesitates before saying, "I don't have a good feeling about this, Kachan. Apple trees need ample amount of sunlight, and that place looks like it's never seen a single ray. I doubt there's anything useful in there." I say sharply, "Got a better fucking plan then?" I poke an accusing finger at his chest and ask, "Can you guarantee the clue isn't hiding there without looking first?" I glare daggers at him, my fist clenched tightly as red-hot rage runs through my veins. "Useless Deku. You're a damn coward, always too scared to get your hands dirty. I knew you didn't have what it takes to be a real hero." My words make him shrink, his shoulders slumped, his eyes sad. He stutters, his voice shaking, "That's not what I meant. I am not scared, Kachan." Little explosions pop out of my palms as I scoff. He staggers back as I give him a rough shove and say, "Excuses, excuses. I don't need your help to explore some stupid woods. But fine, stay here and cower if you want. I'll go get the damn clue myself, like I always do. Just try not to piss yourself before I come back, coward." I turn around and follow the trail of fallen apples without waiting for a response. Whether he's behind me or not, I don't look back. Setting as much distance between us as possible is all that matters to me. I push into the darkness of the trees, lighting my way forward with short bursts of explosions. I don't need anybody to stop me or question everything I do. The air is filled with a sickly sweet stench that is nearly worse than the darkness, and the dim glow reveals a narrow dirt path winding ahead, strewn with rotting apples, some half-eaten, some just mushy pulp. I advance with keen senses, each stride laden with frustration and expectation. The darkness deepens, with shadows encircling ancient, twisted trunks that appear to go on forever, as though the forest itself is watching and waiting to engulf me. The terrain is treacherous and uneven, with the path dipping down and then rising again. I can make out the gap where the trees split like a holy curtain, just past the last twisted branches. With branches scratching my arms, I push through and emerge into the sunlight, escaping the suffocating darkness. And I'm in awe of what I see. The largest and oldest apple tree I have ever seen is in front of me. It is magnificent, almost divine. The weight of thousands of glowing red apples causes its enormous branches to dip low as they extend outward. These are not your typical apples. They have an otherworldly sheen that makes them appear as though they are illuminated from within. Motes of golden dust dance in the air like some divine blessing as shafts of sunlight pierce through the canopy. It resembles a shrine to the abundance of nature itself, almost becoming sacred. The majesty of it overwhelms me as I stand there, frozen. It is awe, not effort, that makes my heart race. This tree is more than just a large tree. It is a monument, a reminder of something strong and old that existed here long before I did. And I'm positive that the clue I'm looking for is concealed somewhere in this hallowed location. I whisper under my breath, "I found it," in a steady but hoarse voice. With a heavy sigh, my chest rises and falls. The clue's gotta be here. It has to be. I can't take my eyes off the tree, as if I'm in a spell. Everything in me tells me that this is it, that this is the solution. I don't care if I come across as crazy. I know deep down that I've struck gold. My chest aches dully as I think about Kachan's stern words. I know deep down that the only way to find the damn clue is to follow him down this tangled, overgrown path. I take a trembling breath, attempting to center myself and suppress the growing doubt, and then cautiously begin to follow him. I try to stay out of his way and avoid drawing attention to myself. We are surrounded by a dense forest. Thick undergrowth and twisted vines snare my legs, and I must be careful with every step I take to avoid sharp rocks and hidden roots. My heart thuds more as he starts up a steep, brush-covered slope, and I nearly lose sight of him. Desperate to keep up, I clamber up after him, my hands grabbing at tangled bushes for balance. The smell of rotting leaves and damp earth fills the air, making it heavy and making my stomach turn. Ahead, a sudden flash of bright, blinding sunlight pierces the canopy, indicating that he has arrived at a clearing. I push myself up, running to catch up, my legs burning. I see him standing a few paces away, his broad back turned, when I finally emerge from the thicket and into the open. He appears to be frozen in awe as he stares at something. I pause, thinking perhaps he hasn't noticed me. I move slowly and carefully to his side. I see it at that moment, and I'm completely in awe of what I see. The oldest and biggest apple tree I've ever seen is standing in the middle of the sunny clearing. It towers silently, like an old guardian. Its massive trunk is textured with deep grooves, knots, and scars that have accumulated over centuries, and it is wide enough to fill a small room. I wonder how many seasons it has seen come and go and how many storms it has endured. As though giving the entire clearing a soft, protective embrace, its robust, sprawling branches reach out in all directions. And the apples are amazing. Oh, the apples. Red and gold, ripe, shining in the gentle sunlight. So many that they resemble a starry sky suspended from the limbs. They appear almost too perfect to be true, hanging heavy in dense bunches that sway slightly in the breeze. It occurs to me that this magnificent, old tree has been concealed in the midst of this untamed forest, out of sight of everyone but the luckiest. It resists the unrelenting passage of time like a holy relic. As if the tree has seen innumerable generations go by this clearing, silently observing everything, a hum of energy seems to pulse around it, thick in the air. This tree is more than just a tree to me. It's a living monument, exquisite, elderly, and so much bigger than life that I almost question its veracity. Beside Kachan, I stand completely enthralled, my heart racing with wonder. I find myself thinking, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. This is something I will never see again. Wow, it's so huge, I mutter, my voice quivering with awe. The sound of my voice startles Kachan, who then spins around as though I had taken him by surprise. He snarls, his eyes narrowing, "Don't sneak up on me like that, you coward. Why are you trailing behind me like some pathetic sidekick?" The sting of his words makes me wince, but I'm still able to bow my head a little. Softly, I'm sorry, Kachan, I say. I should have listened to you earlier. I didn't mean to hold us back. The path was so creepy, I got scared. A frown curls up his face. He grunts, "Sorry doesn't cut it, Deku. Your clumsiness always causes trouble." I force myself to swallow while maintaining a steady voice. "Please forgive me, Kachan. I promise I'll be more careful." Beneath his tough exterior, frustration seethes as he rolls his eyes. "Yeah, of course you didn't mean to. Just try not to screw up this time. We've wasted enough time already. Now focus on the clue." He's more exhausted than I anticipated, as evidenced by the fact that he isn't losing his temper like he usually does. "Yeah, okay," I murmur, relief coursing through me. "Where should we start looking first?" Even though we have to finish our assignment, I can't bring myself to interfere in any way with this natural wonder. To injure even a leaf or a root seems wrong, almost sacrificial. I begin to wonder how I can enjoy the tree's beauty without causing any harm to it. "Don't go near that tree." Kachan's voice interrupts me mid-sentence. "It's far too beautiful for your rough and clumsy hands. I'll go search the top, and you stay put. Got it?" Too lovely. I never thought Kachan would value anything besides his own peculiarity, much less something as serene as this tree. The only things that matter to the Kachan I know are strength, power, and establishing his superiority. He thinks of himself first, but here he is, telling me to honor this ancient wonder. Perhaps the benefits of hero training extend beyond honing our eccentricities. Perhaps it's assisting us in recognizing what really counts, appreciating life, comprehending who we are, and having faith in something greater than mere force. "Sure, Kachan," I nod and say quietly. I take a step back, glad to give him room, and say, "I'll do as you say. I'll stay put." Kachan launches himself skyward with a powerful explosion, disappearing from view in a split second. As I watch him leave, I experience a weird mix of anxiety and admiration. I then return my focus to the final clue. The reason we are here. I push some apples aside to sit awkwardly on the hard ground and scuff my feet against the dirt. The exhausting ascent and the endless hours spent looking through every branch and leaf of all the apple trees back there have left my legs aching and my back complaining. Even though I'm tired and my body hurts, I make myself concentrate. I can still hear the clue's message. Beware of the hands that reach for me. Why should we be cautious if the clue was always pointing to this location? Yes, it's overgrown, but no villagers have visited in a long time. Most animals are kept out by the fence back there, and I don't see any indications of human trespassing. What threat might be present here, then? I then consider the second clue element, which reads, "You can take the time to pause and retreat." But why retreat? I believe our mission is almost complete. I think it's critical that we stand our ground and discover whatever secrets this place may have. The silence is suddenly broken by a growling sound that is abrupt, sharp, and primordial. My instincts take over and I freeze. As I try to locate the source of the noise, my heart begins to race. I understand why this dark path has made me feel so uneasy. I drop into a fighting stance, grip my bag tightly, and swing it around, drawing my blade as instinct takes over. The moment feels tense, and the metal felt cold in my hand. 4 wolves with matted fur, untamed eyes, and menacingly exposed teeth appear from the bushes to my right. For a moment, everything seemed to stop. Their untamed, unblinking eyes were fixed on me. These wolves' casual approach to this area implies that I am an intruder and that this is their territory. These aren't your typical wolves, as evidenced by their aggressive stance and unwavering gaze. With a snarl that made my stomach turn, the largest of them, a huge gray beast, took a menacing step forward. In a flurry of fury, the wolves charge forward without hesitation. Letting go of my bag, I crouch down and prepare myself. In order to gain some distance, I roll to the side and manage to knock the first wolf into the dirt. Reluctantly, I leap to my feet and adopt the fighting stance, my heart thumping in my chest. I know I must harm them in order to survive, even though I don't want to. Even though my muscles tremble and my legs burn, I make myself stand my ground. As the 3 wolves circle me, I make eye contact with them in an attempt to communicate my silent message. They're just protecting their territory, though, and don't seem to understand. The second wolf on my right suddenly lunges. Slicing at the wolf's belly, I spin around in a low crouch. I shudder when I hear its pitiful yelp. When I fail to see another wolf charging at me from the side, I pay a heavy price for my hesitation. I scream as its teeth dig into my arm, a sharp, reflexive cry that reverberates throughout the forest. I've never experienced such a white-hot pain. A fire that consumes me, grows stronger with each heartbeat, and scrapes against my arm's very structure. I fall under the wolf's weight, my blade clattering pointlessly to the wet ground. Beneath it, I fight blindly to get rid of the snarling beast before it clamps down once more. A third wolf is already charging toward me when I manage to push it off somehow and stagger to my feet. My focus is sharpened as adrenaline rushes through my body. My arm shakes from the effort as I pump 20% of one for all into my fist. I yell, "Detroit smash," and muster all my strength. With a sickening crack, the wolf is defeated and flung backward, landing limply on the ground. I stand there, gasping for air, gazing at its still body as relief and horror clash. I'm overcome with guilt. I silently ask for forgiveness, the words leaving a sour aftertaste in my mouth. Tears are threatening to burst from my eyes as my heart aches so badly. Despite his injuries, the first wolf has bounced back and is now circling me with eyes that are blazing with new rage. I slowly push myself up, ignoring the waves of pain radiating from my mangled arm, which are throbbing. I do not wish to cause them harm. These wolves consider me an intruder and are merely protecting their territory. My objective is to leave this place unharmed and bloodless, to flee without resorting to violence. I can't, however, live without Kachan. I can't leave him behind. Instinct takes over as the wolf lunges once more. I plunge to the left, the motion causing my arm to ache again. I turn my back on the attack and cast full cowl, feeling a rush of strength as I run back the way we came. I climb a sturdy tree and hide among the leaves after spotting thick vines. The snarls of the wolves below approach, then stop. I listen, holding my breath. I hear the rustle of retreating paws after a tense moment. I'm not sure if they were pleased that I'm no longer there or frightened by my power. As I hold my injured arm, A constant, throbbing reminder of the violence I tried to avoid. I let out a deep, shuddering sigh of relief. A thunderous boom reverberates through the trees before I can catch my breath. The back of Kachan. The pain in my arm is overpowered by the rush of adrenaline. I jump from where I'm standing and run toward the sound, full cowl accelerating me. My blood freezes when I see the scene that greets me. One wolf lies twitching to my right, its fur covered in a dark, spreading stain of blood. Even worse, Kachan is pinned by two more wolves, whose jaws are snagging perilously near his flailing body. The word, Kachan, makes me cry. I kick out with all my strength, sending the wolves flying off him as I activate full cowl once more, the green energy flaring. I instinctively grab the nearest wolf by the nape of its neck, directing my strength into my arms, and throw it across the bushes with all my strength. It yelps in pain as it strikes the undergrowth. The second wolf is already lunging with its teeth bared as I turn to face it. Avoidance is not an option. Protect Kachan, instinct demands. Before the wolf's fangs can get a grip, my arm swoops out and desperately encircles its neck. With its hind legs fumbling in vain at the sand, its body thrashes violently. Its eyes roll back, revealing whites of fear against its matted coat. Its chest emits a high-pitched whine that ends suddenly. The life drains from the wolf's body as it becomes limp in my arms. I look down in horror. My hands shake. The fear of losing Kachan made me act instinctively to save my friend. There was no other option in that moment, even though I didn't want to kill it. The wolf's body feels incredibly heavy, a crushing burden that is much greater than its actual size. The damp earth and the coppery smell of blood combine to create a deafening silence after the struggle, broken only by the frantic pounding of my own heart and Kachan's ragged breathing. With trembling hands, I gently drop the dead wolf to the ground. With all of my senses searching for any indication of another danger, I look around at the trees and shadows. Hot tears make their way down my cheeks, but I swallow the sobs that cling to my throat and press my lips together in a hard, thin line. What I've done weighs heavily on my chest. Kachan spins around me, his eyes burning with a familiar, flaming rage rather than gratitude. With words as sharp as shrapnel, he barks, "Is this the way you stay put?" I feel as though I've been physically struck by its sheer insolence. His life was saved by me. Put everything on the line. And this, beyond the fatigue and sadness comes a sudden, intense surge of rage. I shout back, my voice strained and raw, "Is this the way you say thank you?" I look at him, my hurt and incredulity fighting each other. I put myself in danger without thinking twice about him, and he can't even muster a single word of recognition? To be honest, I never really thought Katsuki Bakugo would be grateful. However, my list of potential reactions did not include this poisonous attack. "I don't fucking need saving," he yells, his face twisted and spittle flying. "Especially not from a useless weakling like you. This whole shitshow could have been avoided if you just fucking stayed put like I told you." I push myself up, clenching my fists so tightly that my nails bite into my palms, and respond, "What did you expect?" My voice is tight and brimming with annoyance. See my best friend getting torn apart and just sit tight? Enjoy the show? He snarls, "I never asked for your fucking help," and invades my personal space. "Who the hell do you think you are, playing the fucking hero? You're nothing. Just a quirkless loser, shithead." Something breaks inside of me. It all explodes after years of humiliation, being crushed beneath his boot heel, and being referred to as Deku. My throat rips as the words, "I am not quirkless anymore," strain against the lump of emotion. Why can't you get that through your thick skull? I'm not that same weak, worthless Deku you used to kick around. You're so arrogant, Kachan. So blind. You can't stand seeing anyone else get better, can you? Even after I got a quirk. You never saw me as human. Just something beneath you. What more do I have to do? My voice cracks, tears flowing unrestrained now. Years of repressed hurt finally burst through as the confession flows out. What more must I do to be seen as a person, if not a hero? When I started at UA, I told myself I wouldn't let your cruel words hurt anymore. But they still cut. They cut deep. I feel exhausted, drained, and my head pounding from the effort, but oddly lighter, like shedding a skin I'd worn for too long. You were my only friend, and you turned your back on me. I furiously wipe away the tears from my eyes. I say, "But things are different now," with more steadiness and a renewed sense of resolve. Kachan's mouth opens, clearly ready to hurl another verbal volley, another vicious jab intended to break my newly discovered defiance and reaffirm his power. However, then, in his eyes, something flickers. The raging rage doesn't go away, but it falters for a moment, covered by something else, Shock? Worried? It's gone as fast as it came, replaced by a tight mask that can't be read. He closes his mouth abruptly. I have real friends now, I add, feeling more confident after he finally spoke the truth and by his silence. I think of Suyu's serene wisdom, Ida's unwavering support, and Uraraka's radiant smile. I look him in the eye, ignoring the tremor in my limbs, and he says, friends who care about me, who listen, who don't belittle me every chance they get. I don't care what you think anymore, Kachan. I will surpass you. And I will prove myself as the next symbol of peace. The declaration, which is driven by the determination that burns through my fatigue, is strong and clear. How does he manage to shout with such unbridled, unrestrained anger? After just those few sentences, I feel completely exhausted. My legs are as heavy as stones and made of lead. My head is held high only by sheer willpower. Kachan, too. He no longer even looks at me. Have I ever really been able to get him to shut up before? His expression is tight and focused, and his eyes are fixed downward. Worried? Is he? Concerned about the wolf? I look in his direction. Beside my feet, a tiny, dark puddle is forming in the sand. Blood. My blood. My injured arm has a ragged tear from which it drips steadily and rhythmically. The burning pain, the wound, the heat of our confrontation. I had forgotten all about it. The realization strikes me like a sharp, cold blow to the body. The gravity of our predicament strikes suddenly and horrifyingly. We must leave this place. Right now. They might bring the whole pack the next time, and those wolves could come back at any time. Then we hear a bone-chilling howl that reverberates through the trees, close, too close, followed by a sudden, sharp rustling of leaves. My heart sinks. Sand is slipping through an hourglass as time runs out. With his earlier rage banked but not gone, Kachan whips towards me, his face a mask of grim tension. His voice is low and urgent as he yells, "TCH. Now's not the fucking time for your 'I'll surpass you' speeches." The directive is unambiguous. Survival comes first. I'll tell you later how clumsy, stupid, and fuckheaded you are. Right now? We move. With a jerky motion, I nod and tighten my grip on my injured arm. Between my fingers, warm, sticky blood seeps. I fumble after him, the pain shooting up my arm with every startling step. However, Kachan is not going to the fence. He's hobbling off, farther into the brush on the other side of our escape path. Has he gone insane? Panic breaks out. Where is he heading? He stoops under a tangle of prickly bushes and comes out with a small, solid wooden box before I can yell. The hint, in the end, he did discover it. He must have knocked it out of his hands during the assault. With a grunt, he stuffs it into his bag and then turns and runs back down the tunnel-like, dark path from which we came. I compel my legs to move, trailing closely behind him. The faint light coming through the canopy is sucked up by the dense, oppressive darkness. Every rustle seems like a threat, and every shadow seems alive. In a desperate attempt to stop the blood flow and avoid leaving a crimson, shimmering trail that would direct the wolves directly to us, I gritted my teeth against the throbbing in my arm. We limp desperately through the oppressive darkness, moving as fast as silence permits. Our ragged breaths, the crunch of leaves beneath our feet, and the frantic pounding of my own heart are the only sounds audible. At last, the fence's imposing silhouette emerges. Relief fights a tired battle. We draw on our peculiarities with an unspoken, shared look. The impact jarred my wound as we landed heavily on the other side. The sound of quick, scuffling footsteps bursts from the woods behind us as soon as our feet touch the packed ground. We spin around. A number of snarling wolves emerged from the tree line, their shapes forming out of the darkness. Their eyes fix on us with predatory hunger, gleaming in the darkness like hot coals. They are attracted to the enticing aroma of my blood, which is dripping freely down my arm and shining crimsonly in the darkness. When they get to the fence, their teeth are bared in savage snarls as they press against the wooden bars. They string saliva in the air as it drips from their jaws. Their throats rumble with low, guttural growls, a frightful chorus of aggression. With tense muscles, they gaze down at us, threatening to breach the barrier. A wolf, bigger than the others, with matted and scarred fur, then flings its head back and lets out a long, icy howl that rips through the night air. Deeper in the woods, distant, answering calls respond to the sound, which promises violence. The wolves slam against the fence, their snarling muzzles thrusting through the gaps as they are attracted by the coppery, intoxicating smell of Deku's blood. From exposed fangs, saliva flows like venom. Their throats vibrate with low, guttural growls that portend ripped flesh. One huge bastard with scars all over its muzzle flings its head back and lets out a howl that chills my blood. Faraway cries from farther into the forest respond to the reverberating sound. But they can't get over the strong barrier. We take a few quick, cautious steps away as we instinctively recoil from the snapping jaws. My hands itch. The destructive, familiar heat rises, begging to be let loose. How I wish I could yell at those mangy mutts until next week. The satisfying boom and their yelps as they transform into flying furballs are already in my mind. But I suppress the urge by clenching my fists. Every muscle in my fucking ankle is screaming with fatigue, and it's throbbing like a bastard. A full-on brawl at the moment? It would use up all of my remaining energy. Power is what I need to finish this fucking assignment and search this miserable hill. The need to get the hell home is more intense than the battle lust. Finally, like a fucking coward, I turn away and slip away, similar to Deku. I give him another look. His arm is still covered in blood, which is dripping onto the floor and turning it crimson. The wolf's eyes are wild and their claws are scuttering at the fence as a result of that scent. Until we shut off that damn faucet, we can't just bolt. Deku's feeble voice breaks the tension before I've even unzipped my bag for the medical kit. Kachan. Give me your bag. I need to stop the bleeding before we go or they'll follow us. My words are as sharp as shrapnel. Don't you fucking dare order me around, bastard. I yell. The irony is obvious, but I'm already reaching into my pack and pulling out the emergency kit. I know that already. And you need to get rid of that stink before wrapping it up. Did you carry anything useful for this kind of emergency? Is Deku trembling like a leaf due to pain? Fear? Who knows? He's experienced enough today. He doesn't need my goddamn sweet talk on top of it, as much as it annoys me. He croaks, I have a bottle of hydrogen peroxide, his voice cracking on the verge of breaking. But it's in my bag. A tiny bottle of rubbing alcohol is discovered by me. Enough. It will eliminate the odor, clean the wound, and lower the risk of infection. I also pick up a bottle of water. I command, give me your hand, and extend mine. When he hesitates, his wide, hurt eyes meet mine. He mutters, it's okay, Kachan, as he tries to retract his arm. You don't have to do this. I'll take care of it. I scream, just shut the fuck up and do as I say, and he recoils. His gaze flickers back to the wolves before he braces himself and slowly extends his wounded arm. I first cover his fist with water before firmly grasping his wrist. The sand beneath him turns dark red as the water strikes the most severe of the gashes. His arm is covered in so much blood and fucking dirt that I can't even see where it came from. He takes a sharp breath and winces, but he doesn't say anything. I roughly twist his arm and inspect the damage. 8 wounds from punctures. 4 above and 4 below. Deep. Fucking deep. The risk of infection is real. Until we leave this hellhole hill, we'll need to keep a close eye on it. I pull him back a few paces, out of the way of the oozing blood, and begin cleaning frantically. Nerves protruding beneath his skin, he is gripping his upper arm so tightly that his knuckles are white. I suddenly reach for the rubbing alcohol and squirt it straight onto the puncture marks. He falls to the ground, letting out a raw, agonized scream that rips from his throat. Instinctively, he tries to pull his arm away, but I hold on tight. Under the assault of pain, his entire body trembles and shakes violently. I take a seat in front of him and wait a moment for him to take a ragged breath before twisting his hand once more to get to the underside wounds. He lets out a choked whine. Clean traces of tears trickle down his filthy cheeks, blending with the dried blood smudges that previously covered his face. Fuck. One more scent trail. I mutter, stop whining, you wimp, but my tone has softened. I continue to dab, determined to clean every last fucking hole. How on earth did he believe he could accomplish this on his own? If I were the one, I would never, ever allow someone to come close to my arm with that shit, much less put fire to open wounds. Even though this treatment is painful, it is essential. To stop the red tide, I tightly wrap his arm and tug on the bandage. The wolves never stop pacing the fence line, their ravenous eyes following every movement and blood drop that spills out. The work isn't finished, though. It's wet on the ground close to his feet. His t-shirt has a fucking crime scene on the front, and his face. I order, take it off, pointing to his blood-stained t-shirt. He looks at me in confusion. What? I snap, impatient with the need for speed, your t-shirt, dumbass. It's drenched. Take it off. But you're not wearing that fucking beacon. He pauses, then painfully starts to peel the clinging fabric away from his skin. We'll burn it later. Or bury it. Something. He gasps at every movement, the rough cotton tugging at the sensitive skin and dried blood, his injured arm shaking violently from the strain. When he finally succeeds in pulling it over his head, his face is twisted in agony and he is left shivering in just his thin undershirt. Now wipe your fucking face with it, I command him on. He flips the t-shirt and then carefully, with trembling hands, scrubs at the dried blood splatters blending with new tears on his cheeks, saying, "Get rid of that trail. Every bit of it. It's a pitiful but necessary sight." The ground comes next. In an attempt to mask the smell, I kick sand and dirt over the wettest, darkest areas where his blood accumulated. I then unscrew the rubbing alcohol once more and generously splash the disturbed ground with it. The coppery tang is momentarily overpowered by the rise of the sharp, chemical smell. Excellent. He gives me the blood-soaked t-shirt, which I snatch, wad up tightly, and shove inside my backpack. We have one less thing to follow. I say, "Come on," in a low but firm voice. He nods, a little shivering. Need to get out of their sight before we try heading back. With the kit stuffed back in my bag, I begin to limp toward the relative safety of an apple tree nearby, looking anxiously over my shoulder at the skulking predators. Deku, however, stays still. He simply remains there, lost in some fucking internal drama, staring at nothing. I snarl in exasperation, "What the fuck are you waiting for, nerd?" He's zonked out, and hungry wolves are snapping their jaws mere feet away. Planning to stay here all day? Become wolf chow? Goddamn, where's his instinct for survival? He finally wakes up after an eternity of seconds, pushing himself up slowly and grimacing as he does so. Finally, fucking. I want to yell at him to hurry up, but I hold back. The last thing we need is more noise. One lifetime is enough of this kind of shitshow. He stands up, takes 2 halting steps, and then rolls his eyes back. Cradling his arm, teeth buried deep in his lip to prevent another cry, he collapses face first into the dirt with a muffled groan as a wave of dizziness hits him like a truck. Fuck. The word reverberates in my mind like a bullet. We're screwed. Totally screwed up. A cold, sharp spike of panic battles with contempt as I glare down at Deku's crumpled form. Not even able to stand up, I detest this weakling, God. Every nerve aches from the helplessness that radiates from him. I hobble over with a growl of annoyance, my own ankle yelling in protest with each stride. I roughly seize his good arm and pull him to his feet. His face is a sickly white mask of pain, and he is dead weight, leaning heavily against me. Despite all of your instincts telling you to push him away, common sense prevails. As we stumble toward the relative safety of the apple tree, I turn into his fucking crutch, my own injured ankle threatening to give way under our combined weight. We sag against the coarse bark, slipping downward until we are out of the wolves' line of sight. I can feel the deep, bone-weary exhaustion setting in as every muscle in my body begs for rest. Even though the wolves' craze appears to be waning, we sit there breathing raggedly and stealing glances at the fence where they still pace. From a low-lying branch, I pluck a couple of apples and stuff them into my bag. As I bite into one, the sharp tartness serves as a slight contrast to the metallic flavor of fear and adrenaline. I throw another in Deku's direction. "Eat it, nerd. You look like death warmed over." He pushes it away with a feeble shake of his head, "And not hungry." I take another savage bite and shrug. "Make yourself comfortable." In my bag, the damn box containing the clue feels heavy and pierces the fabric. I need to see what we're dealing with and what comes next, so I want to open it. However, Deku will want to look as well if I do it now. Then the mumbling, the theories, the never-ending fucking analysis. No later. Deku is so tired that he is unable to remain motionless. He seems unable to settle into a comfortable position as he is always shifting, twisting, and turning. He lets out a low, pained whimper. SHT. It goes beyond the arm. His eyes narrowed to slits against the pain, his deep, permanent frown, and the beads of sweat slicking his dirty skin are all signs of agony. He is in excruciating pain. I search the medical kit and take out a pain reliever. "Take this," I say, extending it. His voice is thin as he shakes his head once more. "Secant, empty stomach, makes me sick." Are you seriously joking with me? It's so tempting to just shake him until his teeth rattle. Is he rejecting this after rejecting the apple? I lose my temper and yell, "Take the fucking pill, Deku." Without hesitation. However, I control it by tensing my jaw. There's a noticeable greenish tint to his skin. He puking his guts up now, warning every predator within a mile, is the last thing we need. I snatch his jaw, pry open his mouth, and jam the pill in with a growl of utter annoyance. Next, I thrust his water bottle at him. "Swallow. Now." He gulps it down, glaring but obeying. I keep a hawk-like eye on him, prepared to seize him if he heaves. A portion of the tension in his shoulders releases painfully slowly. He leans against the tree and eventually falls into an uncomfortable slumber as his eyelids become heavy and flutter shut. Below the treetops, the sun bleeds crimson and orange, creating long, warped shadows. We remain hidden for perhaps 30 minutes, but it seems like forever. The wolves at the fence become agitated and then disinterested. Their snarls lessen and their pacing slows. They eventually lose interest and drift back into the woods one by one. This is our opportunity. I give Deku a hard-ribbed jab. Wake up, nerd, move time. He flinches violently, gasping as if he had just surfaced from drowning, his eyes wide. With a moan that seems to have been torn from his soul, he nods and pushes himself up. My ankle's throbbing has subsided to a tolerable ache thanks to the rest. Deku? He appears worse. His knuckles are white, and he is still holding his bandaged arm tightly against his chest like a lifeline. Every motion is painful and rigid. Using the tree's growing shadows as cover, we begin to make our way to the entrance on the other side of the fence. I give Deku a nod once we are out of earshot. Green lightning flickers weakly around him as he nods back, full cowl. Now. Cover ground fast. I use my own strength, and we sprint desperately forward with muffled explosions. In record time, we arrive at our first campsite location. We halt, and Deku staggers off, slamming into some bushes. After a moment, I hear the distinct sound of retching. Fuck. I quickly look away and concentrate on the tent bag. I unroll it with needless force as my hands move in irate, jerky motions. Horrible. A few minutes later, looking even paler, if that's possible, he staggers back, using the back of his hand to wipe his mouth. I've gathered some wooden sticks and am jamming them into a crude fire pit. Like a bag of rocks, he falls to the ground, takes small, unsteady gulps of water, and then simply lies there, panting, each breath shallow and ragged. Eyes staring blankly at the darkening sky, completely fucking exhausted. Without even raising his head off the ground, he murmurs, breathless and with a cracked voice, "What are you doing?" Without taking my eyes off the fire I'm building, I yell, "What the fuck does it look like I'm doing?" My hands snap the sticks. Wincing sharply, he pushes himself up onto his good elbow and asks, "Why?" The tent, as he unintentionally places weight on his injured arm. We should take a look at the clue. Head there. Still, got time. Might reach tonight. I spit out, "Look at yourself before running your mouth, you fucking wimp," and then I turn to give him a fierce look. He is a complete mess, pale, shaking, and hardly able to stand. Can't even sit straight. Tend to your other fucking injuries first. We will have our dinner and then we'll look at the damn clue. A faint, pitiful smile appears on Deku's face. He murmurs, "All right. Thanks, Kachan," with a tone of appreciation. He begins to push himself up once more and says, "But, am not hungry. Just resting intent. Till you've dinner." I give him a lava-freezing glance. "Where the hell do you think you're going?" I scream. I reach into my backpack and pull out a couple of crushed granola bars and a slightly crushed mint toffee, saying, "I said we're having dinner. That means you too." I thrust them towards him. My voice sounds harsher than I meant to, but underneath it is, "These should help with your nausea. And finish that water before you crawl in there." Fuck. That foolish concern is back. I detest it to the core. Deku simply nods while gathering the strength to sit up straight and nibble feebly at the granola bar like a fucking rabbit. I raise the campfire with a few controlled, precise blasts, not the typical boom, but little pops. The flickering shadows created by the crackling and dancing flames give Deku an even more frail appearance. My stomach tightens at the smell of the fish I caught earlier, sizzling nicely over the heat. Deku does not speak, strangely silent. He tries to hide by encircling himself with his arms, but he is still trembling and experiencing slight shakes. He breathes too deeply and too consciously. In any case, it's not my issue. He must take over after I give him a break for the first watch. Here, he's not the only one hurt and worn out. Silently, I choke down the fish. Deku eats mechanically and slowly, squirming with each swallow. I take the clue box from my bag as soon as the last bite is gone and slump down next to him. This time, a thin, strong rope is securely fastened to the top of the box. Folded sheets of paper inside. Printouts from Wikipedia. Naturally. The lack of originality shouts. "Lazy bastard." From Aizawa-sensei. Every page has a few highlighted sections and a sloppy scrawl at the bottom. It's an unreadable chicken scratch. I turn back to the first page and begin reading the passages that are highlighted. Arovac plant. The image depicts a dense, dark green bush with glaringly bright purple flowers and ridiculously narrow leaves. The article goes on and on about typical habitats and origins. Blah, blah, blah. Highlights are where the interesting stuff happens. It turns out that medications for pain relief contain the leaf extract. Finally, the scribble at the bottom makes sense. If you've lost the emergency kit or have run out of painkillers, rub leaves around the injured part or bruise. Perhaps it will be helpful after all. It seems pointless to read the entire page because he has already summarized it. Deku, though? It's likely that the nerd would want to commit every single word to memory. In order to flip, I look over to see if he's finished. I'm frozen by the sight that confronts me. Deku's jaw is clenched so tightly that his teeth must be grinding, and his brows are knitted together. He seems to be trying to block out even the slightest amount of light by squeezing his eyes shut. Even I can see that I have a pounding headache. While his other hand snakes around to clamp down like a vice on his shoulder, his injured hand is pressed back against his chest. His eyes are forced open to mere slits as he attempts to continue reading. But a second later, when a crow caws sharply from a nearby branch, they snap them shut once more. It sounds like a fucking drill piercing his skull, and the mere sound causes him to flinch violently, letting out a choked gasp. His breath catches as he slightly curls in on himself. Fuck. This is not good. Very bad. I snap the pages together as I fold them. There is no room for debate in my voice. Get in the tent. Now. He simply nods, looking completely ruined in his thin undershirt as he staggers like a zombie in the direction of the tent. Night shifts. You take second watch. No whining. I lean back and gaze up at the fire. The sky is obscured by heavy, dense clouds that swirl in menacing patterns. Not a star, just a blanket that is oppressive and suffocating. There is a sense of impending violence in the air, which is thick and charged. The storm is on its way. It is palpable in my bones. I eventually sit up and pick up the pages once more. Magrimulish flowers, second page. On thick stems, pink, spiky petals grow in ridiculously neat bunches of 20. I glance at the highlighted gibberish. Diuretic, cathartic, anti-scorbutic, etc. Who gives a damn? I push myself through the next article on Actordium roots, determined to finish, until my eyes catch the handwritten scrawl. Crush flowers. Apply directly to wound if bleeding won't stop. Use leaves to cover wound. Make sure there is no direct contact. Toxic. I'm about to reach for the final page, though, when I notice movement. Deku heaves violently as he leaps out of the tent and stumbles blindly toward the bushes. Fantastic. I can't even resist eating a granola bar right now. I put the pages back in the box and sigh. I reach for a water bottle to keep him from bitching while he's watching, not because I'm concerned. His whole body shakes as I get closer. He trembles, his chest heaving with every painful exhale. Sweat sticks to his skin after soaking through his thin undershirt. With each retch, his eyes swell as if they were about to burst from his skull. His legs give way abruptly. He pitches in the direction of his own vomit, face first. Just before he face plants, I lunge, grab him, drag him back a few steps, and gently lower him to the ground. With both hands gripping his head, he writhes and moans in excruciating pain. In summary, his headache is killing him more than his arm. To get rid of the taste, I raise his head and assist him in drinking and spitting water. Then, using constant pressure, I remove his hands from his head and put my own on top of them. He groans as he tries to break free. Shush, I whisper, comprehending. Right now, even the slightest whisper could feel like a grenade detonating inside his skull. I whisper, do you have anti-nausea meds? While he takes slow, deliberate breaths. Every sound and every movement is agony, and I am aware of how killer headaches operate. He chokes out a, yes. I begin to release the pressure, taking my hands off my body to stand up. However, his hand leaps out and grabs mine like a lifeline. No, he murmurs, his eyes wide with unexpected fear. Just help me to the tent. I'll get it on my own. Just help me up. I say, attempting to distance myself. Shush. Wait here. Back in a sec. He flinches as if I hit him. No, he yells, then groans as he snaps his eyes shut. No, please. Don't. Look in my bag. I'm fine. Really? I'll just go. Thanks for the water. What the devil? What is he concealing? Does it really matter that he's going to crawl like a snail to keep me from looking? Is that his cherished geek notebook? It would be foolish to bring that up here. Or is it worse? Substances? My forehead wrinkles at the thought. Deku? Illegal shit? It's illogical. I believed Deku was too idealistic to even consider such a thing. I watch him push himself up twice. On both occasions, he collapses with a painful gasp as his injured arm fails. I take hold of his good hand and pull him to his feet. His face turns a sickly green at the sudden movement. He throws up all over his undershirt and the floor as soon as he retches again. Racked by dry heaves, he curls onto his side. Fuck. The issue I've been suppressing is intense and indisputable. He's becoming worse. Quick. He can wait for whatever secret he is protecting. He needs darkness, silence, and fluids. Right now. He falls to the ground, limp, when the spasms eventually stop. I hastily retrieve a cool, mint-scented cloth from my bag and dab the vomit off his pale face. I gently raise him up, place my hands beneath his armpits, and partially drag and partially lead him to the tent. I begin removing the ruined, vomit-soaked undershirt inside. I see it at that moment. A massive, dark bruise with black and purple mottling was visible on his right shoulder. I check it with my flashlight and another wipe. It's a chilling sight. Not just the shoulder is affected. Just above his hip, another ugly bruise appears, smaller but no less enraged. How in the hell? He's been keeping this a secret all this time? Deku is still writhing and groaning, unaware that I have found him. I push his bag up against him. I grunt and pick up the dirty shirt. Take your meds, I say. I give him privacy by ducking out and saying, I'll deal with this. He's managed to put on a fresh shirt by the time I get back a few minutes later. Near his feet, the medicine box remains unopened. With his elbows resting on his knees and his head buried in his hands, he is stooped over and exudes misery. With a foot prod, I ask, found the medicine? He shakes his head and reaches for the box with uncurled, shaking hands. I push his hand away, pick up the box, and gently but firmly help him onto his back. I find the pain relievers and anti-nausea. I push the pills into his palm, raise his head, and crack open the water bottle. His voice is shredded from vomiting as he croaks, "What's the second pill for?" I mumble the names. Pain reliever and anti-nausea. Weakly, he jerks his head away. No. Fury simmers beneath my voice as I force it to be level. You're not thinking straight. Take it, I whisper. When this idiot is collapsing, how can he refuse medication? He exclaims, no. Not pain relief, think. I'm sick cuz of the pain pill, earlier. What? The word erupts in my mind, but as soon as Deku groans and curls inward once more, I clamp down. His earlier rejection, can't take it on empty stomach, makes me sick. And his foolish, meandering explanation of gastrointestinal side effects finally hit me. Fuck. My stomach sinks with a chilling, weighty dread. I'm to blame for this. That damn pill was shoved down his throat by me. I disregarded his caution. He's paying for it now. My own stomach turns when I hear his agonized whimpers. Uncomfortable. I'm disturbed. In trouble. Feelings I won't name. Words I won't acknowledge. Quit talking. Simply stop talking. It isn't anything. All I was doing was assisting him. Right now, I'm only doing that. My choice to give him pain medication is not something I regret. I have no regrets. Absolutely not. No damned guilt. What I believed to be right, I did. For a period. I'll fix it, but yes, it backfired spectacularly. I'll make this right. All right, I mumble, trying to sound calm. I take the offending pill out of his hand and assist him in swallowing it with water. Just the anti-nausea then. I extract a mint toffee and place it between his lips because its strong aroma masks the vomit odor. I tentatively press my fingertips against his temples after saying, suck this. Slowly. He recoils, but I begin to rub in firm, slow circles. Every fucking wince and strained breath beneath my hands serves as a reminder that I actually did this. This pain was my doing. The tension in his face releases painfully slowly. His breathing slightly evens out. The first drops of rain start to drum softly and relentlessly against the tent fabric outside. At last, the storm is subsiding. I check my watch. His watch shift is about to begin. I keep thinking about the agreement. He takes second watch. I gaze down at him. At last, his face is still white, drenched in perspiration, and his breathing is shallow. After what I've done, the idea of waking him up and dragging him into the chilly, rainy darkness. I am unable to. I simply cannot. Not after I inflicted this hell on him. The decision is made, firm and final. The fucking watch is mine. Both shifts. The tent drums harder as the rain gets heavier. I remain rooted next to him. Hours pass slowly. When his skin flushes from the fever, I apply cool wipes to his forehead. I keep an eye on his chest's rise and fall and his breathing. I hear the rain, the howls of wolves in the distance, and the gentle, agonized noises Deku makes, even when he's sleeping. The guilt that I won't name is cold and unyielding, like a stone in my chest. Dawn seems so far away. The soft chirping of birds outside immediately drew my attention, and even before I opened my eyes, I could feel the warmth of the sunlight coming in through the opening in the tent. I blinked a couple of times to get rid of the residual blur, and I looked around me with increasing awareness. Kachan, who I now remembered had been there for me all night, was sitting patiently by my side with his head resting on his chest and his eyes closed in a light sleep. The crippling headache, the nausea that had caused vomiting, and Kachan's constant care and presence during it all came rushing back. I recalled the excruciating agony and how Kachan had rescued me by speaking to me in a tone that was so unusually soft and comforting. I hadn't seen that side of him since we were kids playing together in the park, and it had been years. I could still clearly remember that day when I stumbled and fell during a friendly running competition, severely scraping my knee and sobbing. For the simple reason that I still cry a lot. Kachan had hurried to my side without hesitation, utterly disregarding our rivalry. His typically brazen manner vanished as he fussed over my wound and tried his best to console me. Kachan had been like an older brother in that moment, his sternness tempered by sincere care. I had always loved those infrequent moments when Kachan's tough exterior broke down and I could see the compassionate person underneath. As I watch him sleep now, I can't help but wonder what triggered this most recent act of affection. Was it just the threat from Aizawa-sensei? Or was it something else entirely? I can't say for sure, but I couldn't help but miss the times when Kachan's generosity had flown more freely, untarnished by our peculiar status. I sighed with relief as I quietly sat up. At last, the headache had gone away, but the dull pain in my right arm and shoulder persisted. I made room to gently place Kachan on the spot I had just cleared. His eyes snapped open as soon as my hands touched his shoulders, and he tensed up, ready to push me away. But then his face lit up with recognition, and he relaxed, if only a little. "You're up," he said, breaking the silence with a rough voice. "Yes," was my response, and I nodded. "You can rest here. I am sorry I didn't woke up for my shift." While he eased into a supine position to get some rest, he inquired, how is your headache?" Kachan rolled his eyes and interrupted, saying, "It's gone now but my shoulder is still hurting a bit. Thank you for helping me last night. I will." Don't mention it. Just remember that I saved your sorry ass last night and you owe me big time. Besides, I didn't exactly help you with your headache, I just, did what the old hag do whenever I am down. Don't get it twisted. Now, get the fuck out. Just because you brought this tent, doesn't mean you own it. I am going to sleep here and you will do whatever the fuck you want outside of this tent. Go. He then closed his eyes and turned away from me. I couldn't resist grinning foolishly. What he said doesn't matter. He would have surely responded with his usual explosive rage just a week ago, yelling at me to go home and die, you fucking bastard. But last night, something was different. He had spoken with a softness and gentleness that was almost dreamlike in its unusual tenderness. For a moment, I actually wondered if the real Kachan had been abducted and replaced with an alien imposter because it was so drastically different from the Kachan I knew, the brazen and uncompromising force of nature who never held back his contempt. I took with me the clue box that was on top of his bag. I was resolved to carefully read every page with great attention to detail now that I was feeling better. The jackpot turned out to be the final page. It provided detailed instructions on where to find the prize, how to get there, and the fastest way to get back. I could tell by the handwriting that Aizawa-sensei had set up this clue. As I watched us finish this task together, I couldn't help but wonder how far Aizawa-sensei was prepared to go to ensure our success. This final page said, "Here are the hints you need to finish the task. Right now, you're on the Kinnigan Hills southern side. At the top of the mountain, the prize is concealed. To reach the summit, take the meandering path that leads from apple orchards left. You will traverse a thick cedar forest along the route. You'll notice that the trees around you gradually get thinner as you ascend. Your eyes will be able to move freely due to the forest canopy's thinning, exposing the expansive views that lie ahead. It will now be possible to see the previously hidden summit. Be mindful of the rocky outcroppings and cracks scattered throughout the terrain. You must now concentrate your search in these rocky, difficult-to-reach areas because that is where the elusive Hoijiagnia shrubs grow. With their robust, woody stems, these resilient plants have evolved to grow in even the smallest cracks and crevices in the rocky landscape. Look for the unusual twin Hoijiagnia specimens, which are said to grow in an odd, nearly mirror-like pattern. One such pair of shrubs conceals the prize. I'll give you a hint as to the quickest route out of the hill. After retrieving the prize, follow the stream that emerges from the snow-capped peak to return down the mountain. The stream will take you to a dangerous waterfall, so proceed with caution. Proceed downstream after securely reaching the banks of the stream below with the rope. This will lead you to Duya village. Your assignment will be finished when you reach the only police station there. But keep in mind that there are a number of dangerous wild animals on Kinnigan Mountain. When traversing the terrain, you will need to exercise caution. To get through this dangerous area and stay clear of these untamed creatures, you'll need to apply your cunning and quirk skills. I anticipate that you will both bring the prize back together. We'll be back home in a few hours thanks to these extremely thorough instructions. We are only a few hours behind schedule. I'm not even sure if it will have an impact on our grades, but I can't stop feeling conflicted. I'm excited to share with Mom all the wonderful things I've experienced here, and I'm glad I'll soon be able to see her and my friends again. Reuniting with Iida, Todoroki, Kirishima, Mina, and Uraraka and seeing their individual reactions is a scene I can almost visualize. Todoroki-kun will quietly commend me for finishing the assignment without any significant incidents, while Iida-kun, who is always the conscientious voice of reason, will undoubtedly lecture me about my shortcomings. Mina will be giddy with curiosity, ready to gossip about every last detail, and Kirishima-kun will surely be taunting me non-stop with his loud laughter. Uraraka will naturally fuss over me because she worries that I haven't been taking good care of myself. However, I can't help but feel depressed because I know that everything will return to normal in a matter of hours. Kachan's brief concern for my well-being will end, and our relationship will probably never be amicable again because of our past interactions. That I was able to see the old Kachan, whom I had all but forgotten existed, makes me very happy. I truly hope I can see this more tender side of Kachan more often in my life outside of this assignment, and I will always treasure these infrequent memories. I rose and began getting ready for the day. Kachan came out of the tent about an hour later, looking gaunt and with noticeable dark circles under his eyes. "Good morning, Kachan. It's too early, you can sleep a bit more," I replied. To get rid of the drowsiness, he rubbed his eyes and stretched. "Wah? Who cares about sleep? Let me remind you that we have an assignment to complete and we're already running late. I won't let you hold me back today. I don't care if you die, but I am not staying here another moment," he responded and began to prepare. This prompted me to wrap the tent. Every time I had to use my right arm, which was throbbing all the time, I winced. I took my last pain reliever since I had already eaten breakfast. However, it will only lessen the intensity of the pain. But for now, it doesn't matter because I'll be home soon. I was about to leave, bag on my back, when I was startled and my heart skipped a beat when I saw Kachan standing behind me. With that recognizable rough tone in his voice, he asked, "What are you doing?" Taken aback, I hastily clarified that I was getting ready to depart, as he had directed. But his reaction took a surprising turn when he grabbed my bag and shoved his own into my hands. He flipped on his heel without waiting for my response. "You carry that. I'll carry yours. Now, come on. We've got to get moving," he ordered. I couldn't understand why Kachan had insisted on this strange bag exchange. He wants to carry my bag, but why? Now more than ever, I have to watch him carefully. What if he discovers my lucky charm in my bag? I can't allow that to occur, damn it. I quickly grabbed his bag and ran after him, asking him a ton of questions, but he responded with stony silence. I eventually stopped asking him any questions at all. If I won't receive a response, what good is it to ask? The towering cedar trees soon came into view as we followed the clue's path. But as we ascended, the path grew steeper and the terrain progressively more difficult. Sometimes it became so steep that we were forced to hold on to the solid tree trunks for support and balance. The strain on my body became more noticeable, and after climbing each new part of the steep incline, I had to stop and catch my breath. Every step I took seemed to exacerbate the burning pain in my arm, which was gradually spreading to my chest and back. I was starting to find it difficult to keep up with Kachan's speed when I heard him call my name. Determining not to lose sight of him, I engaged full cowling to accelerate after realizing I had fallen behind. When I eventually caught up to him, he sighed. "What's wrong?" I responded, hunched over and gasping for air. "You are way too fast." I cough. Had to take breaks to catch my breath. "Amazing. I'm the one carrying your heavy bag and dealing with a burning pain in my leg, yet you're the one who needs to catch your breath," he said with venom. "Great. Could you be any more pathetic?" I'm trying my hardest to keep up the pace, but you keep slowing us down. Between gasping breaths, I managed to say, I'm sorry. Kachan, can we take a small break? Are you deaf or what? We are not gonna waste our time now that we are so close. Man up for once and move. I begged him with my eyes as I looked up at him. Even though I didn't want to admit it, after using my quirk, I could feel the nausea start to rise and the pain in my chest making it painful to breathe slowly. Tisk. Fine, but this is the last break you will be taking today. Got it? I gave a grateful nod and leaned back against the tree trunk, holding on to my sore arm as I concentrated on calming my breathing and allowing my stomach to calm. The agony was unbearable, extending from my fingertips to my shoulder. Why the painkillers aren't working is beyond me. I opened my eyes and shakily asked for some water as the nausea went away. I shakily asked for my bag to change it after noticing fresh blood leaking through the bandages as I looked down. I carefully removed the soiled dressing with shaking hands, squirming as the motion pulled at the raw, irritated skin. Gritting my teeth against the sharp pain, I cleaned the wound as gently as possible and then wrapped it once more in the hopes that the pressure would stop the bleeding. While I was working, I glanced over at Kachan, who was lying a short distance away with his back to me. He was probably upset that I was slowing him down when we needed to keep going. I followed the clue and said, "You carry that. I'll carry yours. Now, come on. We've got to get moving." With the possibility of success propelling me forward with unrestrained energy, I could hardly contain my excitement to take on this assignment. I felt pity for Deku when I saw him straining to close the tent because, only the night before, he had appeared so frail and vulnerable. To make sure we could get things done as soon as possible, I wanted to run over and help. However, I managed to stop myself, shedding that unusual tenderness. No, I whispered to myself, you cannot afford to be distracted by the pebbles on the road to your success. Deku is Deku, and the extras do not matter. Nevertheless, I couldn't quite get rid of the silent uneasiness that persisted from his earlier distress. He would have to ask for help himself if he really needed it. Nothing or anyone could afford to slow me down. He was obviously having trouble handling the weight of everything as he stood there with his bags packed and prepared to go. He was clearly under stress, his brow furrowed from the strain of lifting the heavy, unwieldy luggage. He would not, however, request help. I knew I had to take action after witnessing his silent suffering. I walked over to him quietly and switched our bags. I was aware that he had used up all of his painkillers, which would only last a short while. However, by taking his bag, I could make sure he wouldn't have to put up with the extra stress of carrying that big load, freeing him up to concentrate on more sustainable ways to deal with his discomfort. The least I could do was that. Then he began to ask questions. I had taken his bag, but why, instead of just asking me meaningless questions, couldn't he use his brain for once? A nerd. All I wanted to do was shout at him to stop talking. However, I was intrigued to read his contents despite his monotonous voice. I ignored his grating digression and maintained a laser-like focus on the road ahead. When he realized I had no intention of answering his incessant questions, he finally fell silent after what seemed like an eternity. My legs started to hurt as the path grew steeper, but I persisted because I was determined to finish the assignment. We continued walking without exchanging words, and before I realized it had been more than an hour since we had last spoken, I couldn't remember how much time had gone by. The most unsettling thing was the silence. Normally, I would have enjoyed the silence and been relieved that he had finally stopped talking, but for some reason, I was almost bothered by it. No, he was being slow, but that was all right. He was so far behind that I could hardly hear his footsteps anymore. I tightened my teeth and halted. It was time to find out exactly what was holding him back. My body froze as I swerved around angrily, about to scream at him for not keeping up. There was no sign of Deku. I lost him. I began calling his name and was going to turn around to find him when he came out, covering the distance with his quirk. "What's wrong?" I inquired inquisitively. Deku was swaying on his feet and was essentially leaning against trees as he struggled to stay upright. He seemed to be having trouble breathing, as evidenced by the short, labored gasps he made. His knees bent under his weight, and the blood was drained from his face. This was unexpected. In the past hour, what had happened to him? "You are way too fast." I cough. Dot had to take breaks. To catch my breath, he let out a gasp. I felt anger in my veins. Am I moving too quickly? Even though my leg is aching for a break from carrying his fucking massive bag, he wants to take a break? Not at all. He should be the one eager to finish the assignment and return home if his condition is that bad. Even the quickest path was indicated by that sleepy head. Then, with his puppy eyes, he dared to look at me. His pale face and the blood on his arm made me reconsider my initial plan to ignore his pathetic expression and move on. Maybe we should take a short break. I could rest my leg on it as well. With a sigh, I took a seat on the ground to unwind. Deku eventually requested some water, so I pushed his bag in his direction. I felt sick to my stomach as he winced and unwrapped his injured arm. I lay on the floor, turning away and covering my face. I know that I am the main reason behind Deku's current condition, so every hiss and whimper from his lips made my stomach turn with guilt. I could have prevented this entire mess if I had gone back to Deku's side sooner instead of hanging out on top of that apple tree. He could have avoided his encounter with the wolves. He wouldn't need to emerge from his hiding place to save me if I hadn't lost my concentration and blasted those wolves away. He wouldn't be in such obvious pain now if I had paid attention to him when he refused to take painkillers, and the worst of it was that Deku declared that he was ready to continue after taking a much-needed rest, and we started climbing again. This time, I walked slowly so I could watch him. The once lush forest started to thin out as we ascended. This was a result of the heavy rains this area received rather than any natural tree thinning. The path was covered with fallen trees, their trunks splintered and jagged, and the trees that were still standing were twisted and bent at strange angles. A rough, stone-strewn surface gradually replaced the soft, grassy ground beneath our feet, a sign of the more dangerous terrain that lay ahead. We had to exercise extreme caution in this area due to the uneven and slick footing. We made the decision to leave our bags close to a strong tree, mark the location so we could find it quickly when we got back, and carried on looking. To find the twin Hoijiagnia shrub, we parted ways and went in a different direction. We decided that regardless of what we had or had not found in our search, we would meet again here in precisely 1 hour. As directed, I scanned the rocky terrain carefully, but I also watched Deku closely, who was using his quirk to quickly scan the area. Aizawa had given us the task of finding the elusive twin Hoijiagnia shrub, which I searched for assiduously. I eventually saw some twisted Hoijiagnia shrubs, but they weren't the exact one we were searching for. Navigating the uneven, dangerous terrain was challenging, and I slipped a couple of times to get a first-hand sense of how dangerous it could be if we went any higher up the mountain. I kept looking, closely examining all of the nooks and crannies, wondering where Aizawa might have concealed our prize. I knew I would have to continue climbing if I wanted to be on my way back soon because he wanted us to reach the top of the mountain. Up here, the temperature was extremely cold. I was completely chilled by the icy mountain air that had descended as we had climbed higher and no longer had the protection of the trees. With every step, the air became thinner and harder to breathe as the altitude increased dramatically. As I pushed myself forward, my lungs burned. I climbed a bit higher and resumed my search. I had already searched this barren area for 45 minutes. A distant glimpse of another twisted Hoijiagnia shrub caught my attention just as I was ready to turn around and give up. Just as I was ready to ignore it, I noticed another leaf at its base. It's this. I located it. I took in the shrub's location, but my moment of success was brief. The Hoijiagnia shrub stood alone in defiance against the rocky, windswept landscape, perched precariously on the edge of the tall cliff. From where the plant clung to the precipice, the sheer, ragged rock face rose more than 10 meters, a dizzying height that seemed to mock any attempt to reach it. My hands won't be free to thoroughly examine the area, even if I use my quirk to keep myself steady in midair. The idea of descending to the shrub's location if I could somehow make it to the clifftop above made me feel dreadful. One mistake, one small miscalculation, and I'm dead meat, plunging 50 meters to the merciless rocks and raging waters below. Options that seemed tantalizingly close but completely, dangerously out of reach, a cruel tease hanging just out of reach, made my heart race. I retrieved our rope using my quirk because I was determined to finish the assignment. I took advantage of this chance to thoroughly inspect Deku's bag in an attempt to learn his secret. I carefully went through the contents and discovered a variety of commonplace items, including some instant ramen cups, a medicine box, a toolbox, and extra clothing. Nothing appeared unusual or deserving of concealment. Unfortunately, there was also no trace of his hero analysis journal. But as I was about to give up, I noticed a familiar item. A figurine from the All Might limited edition. Well, so the overly eager Deku was unable to fully mature and continued to cling to such juvenile collectibles. Something about the figurine felt oddly familiar just as I was ready to put it back. I couldn't place it, but it felt like I had seen it somewhere. Oh no, I was frustrated because I knew I was wasting time, and at the moment, the assignment was my top priority. I quickly packed his bag again and hurried back to the cliff. I noticed a white tiger relaxing on the rocky outcrop as I arrived at the clifftop. As I approached cautiously, the great beast's muscles tensed with the possibility of sudden, explosive action, and its piercing gaze grew alert and attentive. Given the potential consequences of inciting the tiger's aggression, I acted swiftly, launching a barrage of blasts at it to frighten it away before it could gather the courage to attack. After resolving the tiger problem, I focused on securing my lifeline. I wrapped the strong rope tightly around the sturdy trunk of a nearby tree and repeatedly tested its strength to make sure I was safe before starting to descend. I couldn't help but feel a nagging sense of apprehension as I got ready to descend the sheer cliff face. Was it the cold mountain air or the ancient fear of dying that made my body tremble? I slapped myself, steeling my nerves. Heroes don't cower in fear, and I am the greatest hero. My muscles protested the strain of bearing my entire weight as I started to descend slowly, inch by excruciating inch. I eventually decided to use my quirk to keep me in the air and travel farther in less time because I was getting frustrated with the slow progress. When I got to the shrub, I looked around to make sure my feet were planted firmly. Disaster struck as I shifted my weight, shifting the majority of it onto my right leg. The ground gave way, and I experienced a heart-stopping panic as I started to fall again. I swung like a pendulum, ready to strike the rocky surface, as the rope soon tightened against my chest. I quickly gained altitude by reacting with lightning-fast reflexes and unleashing powerful blast after blast. I tested the rocky surface carefully this time, then pressed my feet firmly against the narrow space. I stopped to stop my heart from pounding. At last, I managed to lift the heavy boulder that covered the roots of the shrub. I was shocked to discover two plain-looking scrolls when I moved the rock instead of the wooden box I had anticipated seeing. I whispered, "Come on, sleepyhead. You could have at least added a simple box." Well, when I think about it, maybe it is better to carry this way. I tucked the two scrolls carefully into my shirt and then pushed myself back up the cliff, reaching the solid ground at the top with my strong explosions. I called for Deku so that we could both look at the scrolls together, even though I wanted to read them right away. When I finally got to see the prize we had searched so hard for, I was ecstatic. I made the decision to return after a number of calls went unanswered. Something whimpered softly, and I heard it. My heart raced when I heard a faint, familiar voice saying, "Caw. Caw. Chaw," and realized it was Deku. Initially, I thought it might be some sort of animal. Due to the rocky, slick terrain and my waning energy, the hunt for the twin Hoijiagnia shrub turned into a terrifying ordeal. The task was difficult due to the rough terrain. Each step had to be carefully placed to prevent dangerous footing. As I climbed higher, the thin air bit my lungs, making the challenge even more difficult. There were still dark clouds hanging over them, remnants of the rainstorm from the night before, ready to drop their icy cargo at any time. Desperately looking for the elusive twin Hoijiagnia shrub, I darted from one crevice to the next as I scanned the rugged mountainside. When I discovered the first Hoijiagnia shrub shortly after I began my search, I was ecstatic. However, it wasn't the twin I was searching for, and it wasn't bent. Determined to finish the task and get the item from the top, I pushed forward with every arduous step. I heard a string of strong explosions all of a sudden. "Kachan," I whispered. I made the decision to get closer to you so we could look for it together. The explosions became louder and more frequent as I moved over the uneven ground, indicating that Kachan was getting closer. Desperate to find Kachan as the explosions became louder, I strained to get a glimpse of him, but then a huge white blur rushed toward me from the same direction. I initially thought it might be Kachan himself, but as it got closer, I saw it wasn't a human. Rather, it was a huge white tiger that was running at me with unexpected speed, its strong muscles showing through its immaculate coat. With a fierce, angry glint in its eyes, the fierce feline approached, and I froze, my heart racing. The tiger suddenly lunged at me, its enormous jaws agape. I ducked low and rolled quickly to the right in a split second, barely avoiding the creature's strong leap. However, as I moved, my right arm began to burn intensely, serving as a painful reminder of the injury that was still there. Adrenaline rushing through my veins, I shakily stood up as the tiger roared back and charged at me again. I decided to try to seize the beast's paws and throw it away from me because I was determined to protect myself. However, the tiger's assault was too fast, too heavy, and too powerful for my weak right arm to manage, and my hold broke. I fell backwards as the tiger's razor-sharp claws slashed across my chest. I knew I had to move quickly as it lunged at me once more, ready to bite into my flesh. I mustered all my strength and used my strong quirk to kick the tiger's side with great force. After exerting a lot of energy to stand again, I used 20% of my quirk to smash a nearby tree and throw it in the direction of the beast. The enormous projectile swept the tiger across the ground for a considerable distance before coming to a stop, causing the terrified animal to turn and run away in the opposite direction. However, it began to run in Kachan's direction. I instantly engaged my full cowling and hurried to put myself squarely in the tiger's path, preventing it from fleeing. The only option left to the terrified animal was to turn and run into the woods, away from the danger I pose. My entire body ached from the experience, and as the adrenaline wore off, I felt like the world was spinning around me. I started to wobble and fell down the rocky slope, my body bouncing and hitting the rocky terrain. A sharp, jagged tree branch that protruded from a tree's base pierced my side just as I thought everything was gone, and the burning, excruciating pain took my breath away. Even though the tree had prevented me from falling, the agonizing pain it caused was nearly unbearable. My attempt to scream was unsuccessful because the shock of the injury had taken my voice. I tried to slow my ragged breathing by forcing myself to concentrate, but the act of drawing air into my battered body only made the agonizing pain radiating from the wound worse. Desperate to break free from the branch's hold, I fought to move, but every movement sent shivers down my spine. Just as I was about to faint, I heard faint explosions in the distance, and with a tremendous effort, I summoned the last of my strength to call for assistance. The only sound that emerged was a raspy murmur. Before I saw Kachan crouching in front of me and frantically telling me to stay awake, I couldn't remember how long I had been in that position, weakly calling out to him. Someone grabbed my waist, making the pain worse, and I woke up with a start and screamed like hell broke loose. I'm not sure when I closed my eyes. As though I were underwater and someone was frantically attempting to drag me back to the surface, only to allow me to descend once more. Kachan's voice was muffled and distorted. This time, I used all of my remaining energy to stay afloat and concentrate on understanding Kachan's words, but as I was ready to do so, Kachan departed. All I could think about was the intense, crippling pain that tore through my body, along with a crippling sense of fear and loneliness. Had I been abandoned by Kachan? Had he made the decision to continue without me, or was he returning? I sobbed uncontrollably, my cries resonating through the deafening silence, because the overwhelming emotions had become too much to handle any longer. I could feel my chest getting tighter, making it harder and harder to take a breath. I tried desperately to slow my ragged breathing and regain control, but the agony was overwhelming. I started to move to get rid of the branch and free myself, gritting my teeth. I braced myself and attempted to scoot backwards inch by excruciating inch, with each tiny movement sending searing pain flashes through me. With each tiny movement, I could feel the sharp wood shifting and grinding against my sensitive skin. But before I could move a single centimeter, the pain's overwhelming intensity broke my will, causing my body to go limp and me to accept my miserable fate. Now all I could do was lie there, breath ragged, teeth clattering, heart pounding, and desperately waiting for the merciful darkness to finally take me over. When I closed my eyes, the dizziness only grew worse, but I welcomed it. However, I was unable to sleep, and my condition grew worse by the moment. Eventually, I sensed someone standing behind me. All I could do was hope it wasn't the white tiger, which had come to complete the task it had begun. Fingers pressed against my neck to check for a pulse. Kachan's face was leaning over mine as I opened my eyes to see her attempting to communicate with me. I can't even recall the exact moment I shut my eyes. He simply stared at me as though he didn't understand when I tried to explain what I wanted. He stepped behind me, tearing my shirt open to reveal the ragged, angry wound. As he started to poke and prod the sensitive, irritated skin, I uncontrollably shivered. "Please," I muttered. "Please stop." "Stop it," he said, implying that it would only take a minute. That he'll take it off as quickly as possible. It made no difference. My midsection was barely perceptible anymore. I just wanted to go to sleep. I woke up with a stomach ache so intense that I jumped up and yelled. Unconsciously, I triggered my quirk and pushed it away. There was a thud and a grunt. White-hot pain radiated from my abdomen, arching my back. I hardly had time to turn my head before I started throwing up because the nausea was so bad. I felt like I was being torn apart from the inside by each retching contraction. Someone told me to relax and began massaging my back in slow, soothing circles. Someone tried to offer me a drink when the heaving finally stopped. It was water at first, which was thankfully bland, but the second time it was something so awful that I spat it out and passed out once more. Things were starting to make sense by the time I woke up again. Overhead, the clouds had darkened to a charcoal hue, and the earthy, wet smell suggested that it had just rained. I moaned as I attempted to roll over, and Kachan's face appeared next. Exhaustion rimmed his normally bright eyes, and he was completely soaked, with water droplets still sticking to his skin and clothing. "Eh? You okay?" he inquired. It was not a question. You stayed. Nor was I anticipating a response. It was a huge relief just to have him around. No, I am a fucking villain impersonating Kachan. The real Katsuki is resting peacefully at home. Of course, I stayed. What did you expect, nerd? We need to complete it together or we both fail. Did you hit your head too? I was lying there shivering when a tiny smile appeared on my face. I noted the injuries I had. My legs felt totally detached, my right side was still burning but it was tolerable now, and my head was pulsing in time with my heartbeat. With a sigh of relief, I curled my toes and discovered they were still responsive. I noticed that I was strewn about in the tent as I looked down, and I knew that a tight bandage was in place beneath this tangled cocoon. The cold crept through all the layers, a sour chill that seemed to seep into my bones. He questioned, "What the fuck happened?" I sighed as I began. "I heard some explosions and thought you were nearby. It hurts so much, God. I started making my way towards you when..." Cough. The burning pain that rushed through my body made me wince. "Hey, here, drink some water," he said as he assisted me in sitting up against a tree and sipping some water. "At this rate, we will both end up catching pneumonia. Can you move?" I nodded and said, "Yeah. I think I can try. We should head west, towards that stream, away from this rocky surface after changing into some dry clothes," he said, raising an eyebrow as though he were doubting what he was saying. "But we haven't found the twin Hoigiagnia shrub yet." He looked away and said, "Oh, we did." My eyes widened as I cried, "We did?" I scowled when he said, "There is no doubt now that you have a concussion too." He became irate and said, "TCH all right, I found it," before turning away once more when I simply glared at him for an answer. "There were 2 scrolls and before you ask, no, I haven't read them yet. I was, you know, sort of, busy." Unable to look him in the eyes, I bowed my head. He was busy caring for me, and I knew it. He now considers me to be a burden. He's correct. He could have been sleeping soundly at home by now if he had gone on without me. This is only because he had to follow Aizawa-sensei's rules. "We could read them now," I murmured softly. "No, it's freezing out here and the rain didn't help in the least. I tried setting up the tent but this damn rocky surface didn't let me. We are leaving this place right now and that is final." He dug through my bag and helped me untangle from the tent. The fatigue in my bones prevented me from objecting, even though I felt I shouldn't have allowed him to do this. He helped me change my shirt after giving me my dry shirt and pants. I followed him as he began to undress and vanished into the woods. I was about to finish the agonizing procedure when I noticed him coming back with a long, solid branch. He came over and quietly started packing everything up while I was exhausted and huffing and puffing. I grabbed his outstretched hand and slowly got myself up, squirming every time. My 2 legs were shaking wildly. A wave of vertigo swept over me as I stood, and I leaned heavily against the tree for balance. My eyes pricked with tears of pain. Even though it hurt more to remain upright, I was committed to finishing this task and not bothering Kachan anymore. "Take this," he said, passing the branch to me. I furrowed my brow and looked at the makeshift walking stick, wondering in silence why it was there. "TCH. I can't carry you and your feather light bag together. This will support you while walking." Despite the sarcasm in Kachan's remarks, I was surprised by how much her small act of assistance moved me. Even though he would never explicitly acknowledge it, I could see the underlying worry in his eyes. He was aware that I would probably find it difficult to finish the task by myself, but he also understood that I would be too proud to ask for his help outright. Even though I resented the sarcastic jabs he threw at me, I was moved by this small, thoughtful gesture. I'm determined not to burden him, so if at all possible, I'll finish this assignment by myself. But just having that walking stick, a physical reminder that he is on my side, has strengthened my resolve and given me more faith that I can finish this. "Deku." No response. "I've heard it before. Damn it, I need a sightline, height, and leverage." "Fuck," was my response as I hurried to the sound, my heart racing. I didn't care that I frightened a lot of animals along the way. I was only thinking about Deku. As I observed the condition of the trees at the base of the cliff, the urgency of the situation only increased. I could see from our ascent that there were numerous broken trees lining our route, but I also noticed that one tree had been swept far from its original location. It made Deku's raw power very evident. However, where is he? Kachan, the faint sound of my name, encouraged me to continue, leading me to where he was. At last, I saw him in the distance, lying with his back to me and embracing a tree. The sight of him relieved the mounting pressure in my chest. Maybe he was just resting because he was tired. But as I got closer, the sight before me made my heart sink. The blood-stained branch sticking out from his back made my stomach turn, and the big, dark patch on the ground was definitely blood. How long had he been alone and suffering in this agonizing position? With my heart hammering against my ribs and my lungs burning, I launched myself into a desperate run. When I got to him, I knelt down and touched his face. His face was twisted in agony, and he was pale. With his eyes closed and his breathing ragged and shallow, he did not answer when I asked, "Fuck. Deku, can you hear me?" With a high-pitched voice, I said, "Shit, oh my god. Deku. Wake up, damn it." I am aware that Deku can handle pain like a pro. After all, he frequently breaks his bones, which would certainly leave most of us in ruins and unable to continue fighting, but he always gets back up. His face twisted, and he began to gasp and complain, so I knew this must be a completely different kind of pain. He opened his pain-filled eyes, but they seemed to be far away, as if he couldn't see anything. His voice was weak as he rasped, "Keikachan? Come on, stay awake. Alright? I need you to stay awake. Do you hear me? I will bloody kill you if you closed your eyes," I said with a raspy voice. My throat constricted. I had never felt fear really take hold of me before. It was fear for him, not fear for myself. With shaking hands, I stepped behind him and carefully lifted his shirt to examine the damage. With the skin and muscle ripped and mangled and the blood flowing freely in a sickening crimson tide that pooled around him, the branch had punched a ragged hole in Deku's midsection. My senses were overwhelmed by panic, shattering the complex barriers of self-control I had accumulated over the years. The graphic image made my stomach turn, and I had to force myself to swallow in order to control the rising bile. However, despite my overwhelming panic, I know that I must take immediate action to stop the bleeding. My hands were slipping from all the blood, so I used my right arm to grab him by the chest and my left to tie his waist. My intention was to push him back in order to cut off the lethal branch, but as soon as I moved him, he screamed in agony, so I let him go. Fuck. This strategy was obviously ineffective. I must come up with a different plan before it's too late. His voice pierced my very soul as he sobbed and gagged. What ought I to do? 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 What am I supposed to do? Time was passing through my fingers like sand. I frantically tried to come up with something. I could try again after cutting the branch off the tree. I turned to Deku with renewed resolve, my voice quivering with urgency and worry. "Deku," I uttered. "I am going to get the blade from your bag. You just need to hold on. All right? You need to stay awake. Understand? Once that branch is out, you can sleep all you want. But right now, you just have to hold on. I'll be back as fast as I can." The fear that seized my heart persisted as I turned to go. When did it happen, and what might have happened to him? My anxiety only increased as the questions raced through my mind. As we arrived at the tree we had previously marked, I hastily dug through Deku's bag in an attempt to find the blade I had previously used. However, my hand brushed against the wooden boxes we had previously found, the same ones that had brought us this far, instead of the blade. I suddenly realized that I had completely forgotten about the scrolls one had discovered. I quickly grabbed the box with the intention of carefully putting the scrolls inside for protection. The contents of the box contained the exact information I needed at this moment because our supply of painkillers was rapidly running low. In a panic, I read the article about the Airvac plant's qualities as a natural analgesic that might give Deku the relief he so sorely needed. Determined to find this plant at all costs, I combed through the information and carefully examined the accompanying photos. I quickly looked through the emergency kit, but considering the severity of Deku's injuries, I discovered that there were dreadfully few antibiotics. Thankfully, the clue also made reference to the magrimulish flower, which has strong antibacterial qualities. I remembered that earlier, when I had been looking for the twin Hojikne shrubs, I had seen some bright pink flowers. I realized with a new sense of urgency that I needed to quickly collect all the ingredients I would need. I heard Deku's screams reverberating through the forest as I reached for the bags. There was not much time left. I hurriedly collected everything I would need and put it in its own box. I rushed back to where Deku lay, carrying his bags and mine. I was worried by what I saw when I first arrived. Deku's face had paled even more, and he was gasping and breathing heavily. Under his half-closed lids, his eyes wandered restlessly, displaying a profoundly unnerving vulnerability as he shivered uncontrollably, but he was still conscious. It was difficult for me to determine if this was a positive or concerning sign. Without wasting any time, I felt his pulse and saw that it was pounding dangerously fast. Is shock setting in? "Hey Deku, can you hear me?" I knelt down in front of him and said, "Listen, I am going to cut that branch from that tree and then we'll try to remove it." "Okay, I will be super fast, I promise. It won't hurt, it will just sting a little. I paused, hoping that my words would reassure him. I don't know where he was coming from, but I wanted to reassure him. I know you're brave, aren't you? You're All Might after all. He was attempting to speak, but his words were severely slurred. As his condition worsened, I tried to understand what he was saying, but eventually I gave up and tried to console him. Shish, Izuku, I reassured him, it will be all right in a minute. Just keep on being strong, all right? I started working right away. I started by taking off his shirt, and I was startled to see 3 perfectly straight gashes across his chest that looked angry and were bleeding. What on earth went wrong? Since they weren't bleeding much, I applied Arovac leaves to the stab wound to numb it. His voice broke the stillness, hardly more than a whisper. Please stop, he said, before he passed out. I was overcome with fear. I am aware that there is not much time left. His body was radiating heat, and I could feel it. I knew that before doing anything drastic, the pain had to be minimized. The pain is lessened by the Arovac leaf extract. What happens if I crush the leaves and apply the extract to his injuries? It ought to function, right? I made a fine paste quickly, strained it in a bottle, and carefully applied some to his wounds. I cut the branch cleanly with the blade in one hand and Deku steady in the other. I prepared for the worst by gently placing Deku on his back and applying more Arovac extract to his front and back wounds. I quickly withdrew the branch, and a stream of dark blood poured out of the jagged hole at once. Deku whimpered in pain, but he was still unconscious. The sight of the raw, mangled wound, the skin turned inside out, revealing the enraged, glistening tissues underneath, made my stomach turn. I don't have any supplies, but it obviously needs stitches. To be honest, I couldn't do that even if I had the required equipment. The mere sight of the wound made my stomach turn so bad that I had to turn my head away and take a few deep breaths to prevent myself from retching. Deku was bleeding out, and I had to take quick action to stop the flow, so there was no time to waste. Gritting my teeth, I covered his abdomen with my hands as the sensation of the wound made my stomach turn once more. He gave a spine-tingling scream as soon as I put pressure on him, and the next thing I knew, I was flying through the air and colliding with a tree. That was to be expected, I suppose. He had already run out of stomach contents to throw up, but I could still see him groaning and retching on the ground. I sat beside him and gently massaged his back in slow circles, being careful not to touch the wound. My hands caused his body to tremble violently. At one point, my vision suddenly became blurry, and I realized with a sharp pain that I had begun crying with him, uncontrollably streaming the tears down my cheeks. After the heaving stopped, I gave him some water and then the extract from Arovac leaves, but he spat it out and passed out once more. Fuck. He's lost a lot of blood already. I hastily pulled him to a spotless area and began tending to his injuries. More blood leaked out of the wound when water was poured over it. I'll clean the wound after I've stopped the bleeding, even though I know I should do so to prevent infection. I crushed the pink flowers with trembling hands and applied the petals to the open wound. I held out hope that the bleeding would stop, but it didn't. The blood poured from the crushed petals. Hell in hell. At this rate, his blood loss will kill him. This time, I collected long, thin leaves, covered them with more crushed flower petals than before, and gently applied firm pressure while laying the makeshift dressing over the wound. I sighed in relief as the bleeding appeared to stop this time. I cleaned my blood-soaked hands with his ripped shirt first, then I carefully cleaned the blood off his body, taking note of the numerous bruises that now marred his skin more than they had yesterday. I labored to gently dress his limp, still body, the bandages firmly encircling his wounds. I can only hope that the effects of the Arovac leaves and not something more serious are the reason he didn't make any noise when I handled him. First task. Stop the bleeding. Completed. Task 2. Take care of his fever, on it. I carefully raised Deku's head and put the fever reducer pills on his tongue after removing them from his bag. I rubbed his throat and slowly poured water into his mouth to aid in swallowing. After coughing a little and spitting water, he began to drink indiscriminately. He eagerly gulped down the water as I kept adding more to his parched mouth. I put him back down after I was satisfied, prepared to try to make him more comfortable. It's time to hide him now. Damn this rocky terrain. I tried to set up the tent. The nails obstinately bent as I attempted to drive them into the ground, preventing me from fastening the structure. I eventually gave up and resigned myself to just sitting by Deku's side after multiple fruitless attempts. I was worried to see that he had a high fever when I took his temperature, but that was to be expected given the shock from his injury. Before long, Deku started to move, his teeth clattering and shivering in spite of his unconsciousness. It dawned on me then that the cold wind had increased, and I was shivering too. The adrenaline pulsing through my veins had numbed me to my own discomfort, so I hadn't even realized that I was shivering. I tucked the sleeping bag around myself and quickly wrapped him in the tent sheet, trying to give him what little warmth I could. But as soon as I got comfortable, the sky parted and a deluge of rain fell. I quickly held Deku's head in my lap, using my quirk to warm my hands and transfer that heat to him as his groans of discomfort cut through the roaring rain. He arched his back in agony. I knew I had to give him another dose of fever reducer as his whimpers of pain broke my heart. I shivered uncontrollably, my injured ankle throbbing from the cold, as the wind howled and my sleeping bag was swept away, leaving me exposed. Despite the discomfort, I leaned over Deku to carefully administer the medication and shield him from the raging storm as much as possible because I was determined to keep him safe. We were left shivering in the cold air as the rain stopped suddenly, just as quickly as it had begun. Deku's whimpering had at least stopped, which was a minor but welcome improvement. I kept up my quirk, producing tiny, regulated bursts of heat to keep the cold temperatures at bay and warm us both. Extreme focus was needed for the effort, and as exhaustion set in, the strain of keeping a steady stream of warmth seeped into my limbs. Eventually, after what seemed like an eternity, Deku's eyes opened and met mine. The sight gave me a wave of relief because I had been so anxious and had been expecting the worst. My mind was immediately flooded with questions. How did he feel? Did the pain subside? Had I overlooked any more wounds that required care? Such worries and the notion of lowering myself to worry about Deku's well-being would have been laughed at by the previous version of myself. I would have thrown a complete fit at the idea only a few days ago. He croaked, his voice hoarse from all the yelling. You stayed? I looked at him in disbelief. What? Naturally, I stayed. What was he contemplating? That I would leave him? Did he truly think I was so unworthy? I wanted to choke him because I was so furious, but I forced myself to keep my cool and keep my cool instead. Deku is the only one who can use 2 words to make me hate him. No, I am a fucking villain impersonating Kachan. The real Katsuki is resting peacefully at home. Of course, I stayed. What did you expect, nerd? We need to complete it together or we both fail. Did you hit your head too? His face lit up with a silly smile. Is it true that I joked? His contagious smile pulled at the corners of my mouth despite my annoyance. I immediately asked him what had transpired. His face twisted in agony as he described how a severe coughing fit tore through his body. That's it. We're heading out and we'll find a warm place. Weakly, he stated, but we haven't found the twin Hoijiagnia shrub yet. I reluctantly informed him that I had located it. He widened his eyes in surprise and said, We did? My heart sank at the expression of surprise and admiration that filled his face. I knew this reaction was inappropriate, but he gazed at me with such admiration that I was unable to look him in the eye. I hadn't done anything to merit such uncritical trust. We were both freezing out here, but I knew he would want to see the prize for himself. We needed warmth, and we needed it right now, if we were going to finish this task alive. I decided to steer us away from the rocky terrain and toward the neighboring stream. I helped him change his shirt after searching through his bag for dry clothes. Then, to give us some privacy, I went into the woods. On my way back, I picked out a long, solid branch, broke it to Deku's height, and gave it to him as a walking aid. Cradling my bag in the front and carrying his in the back, I began to move forward. Even though it was only a few miles, I wanted to walk behind Deku so I could catch him if he stumbled or faltered, but I was too proud to do so. Even in this dire circumstance, I couldn't stand the idea of coming across as overly concerned or caring. I have to uphold my reputation. My sharp eyes scanned the surroundings as we plodded on, remembering the stream I had found while looking for our prize. I was determined to get us to the stream as soon as possible because I knew it would be warmer there and there would be mossy grass that could help Deku recover. I was on the lookout for any dry branches that might be used to start a campfire along the way because I wanted to make sure Deku had a few hours to rest and recover before we started down the hill. My mind raced, trying to balance my sincere concern for Deku against the need to appear unconcerned, but in the end, even though I would never say it aloud, Deku's welfare came first.
I will continue the series in next part. Till then, bye bye.